Number 5. Incantation. Apparently right now it's the ranking for the most watched non-English horror film worldwide, with over 10 million hours watching and rising. That's pretty sick right there, starting off, you know? Obviously I couldn't leave this one off the list with a reputation like that, so here we go. Incantation is a 2022 Taiwanese found footage supernatural horror film directed by Kevin Ko and co-written by Kevin and Chang Shi-wei. Released in Taiwan March 18th, 2022, it became the highest grossing Taiwanese horror film ever made. Yeah, it's received international distribution from Netflix. Hey, Netflix, so good. Since July 8th, 2022. Here's the plot. A woman named Lee Ronan narrates the film, imploring the audience to memorize an insignia and chant an incantation to bless them and lift a curse on her 6-year-old daughter Dodo. The insignia and incantation are interspersed frequently throughout the film to encourage the viewer to pray along with it. Yeah, it's pretty horrifying. Ronan, her boyfriend Dom, and Dom's cousin Yuan break a religious taboo while documenting a ritual for their internet channel. They go to a remote village of Dom and Yuan's relatives who practice a religion worshipping an ancestral deity called Mother Buddha. The clan asks the three to submit their names with the incantation to Mother Buddha. And here we go. That night, the group spy on the clan performing a ritual where a young girl seems to be willingly prepared for sacrifice. The girl, whose body is covered completely head to toe in runes, was left in front of a tunnel which the clan said is forbidden. Ronan waits for the girl while Dom and Yuan enter the tunnel. Uh-oh. Yeah, that's not good. Yuan later emerges screaming and Dawn seemingly lifeless. Ronan and Dodo's house soon becomes infested by unexplained ghostly activities, and Dodo is disturbed by a shadowy presence. They bring her to a shrine where a priest agrees to exorcise Dodo. Yunan later becomes possessed and sends copies of the tunnel footage. That's horrifying. Yeah. Just Chuck Liddelling yourself on a computer desk. Yeah, you're definitely gonna need a Tylenol after that one. Ouch. The film ends with some audience participation, and I'm not gonna spoil anything, don't worry, but after watching this, I kinda understand why it's rated what it's rated. Yeah, very scary, but also really good. As always, dudes, if you like what we do here too, hit the like button or leave us a comment down below. Which 2022 horror film has you hiding behind the covers? Number 4. Horror in High Desert. Horror in High Desert is a 2021 American film written, produced, and directed by Dutch Merrick in a pseudo-documentary format featuring found footage elements about the mysterious disappearance of a hiker in Nevada. An experienced outdoorsman vanishes in North Nevada while on an outdoor excursion. On the 3-year anniversary of his disappearance, his friends and loved ones recall the events leading up to the disappearance and for the first time speak about what they think actually happened. The first part focuses on the police report of hiker Gary Hinge. Toward the end of July 2017, Gary hiked to an unspecified area in the Mojave Desert, and the police conduct a search based on the last GPS of location on Gary's cell phone. As time goes by, the media stop reporting, and a private investigator named Bill is asked to investigate so that the case would not be abandoned. The investigation then focuses on clues in the last of the published videos. Gary appears in frame from his home, narrating a very unusual experience. The footage found reveals that Gary was able to find his way back to some mystery cabin. There he hears chanting that seems to be human-like, and he eventually is attacked and the camera stops recording. Reporter and the private investigator speculate that who or what might have attacked the hiker. It is mentioned that the police have made this footage public in the hope that someone in the audience might offer some additional clues, which spark a series of theories such as Area 51, atomic testing, satanic rituals, and of course, extraterrestrials. Yeah, that's absolutely horrifying. I didn't even see that thing. They really do a good job at involving the audience in the experience by asking them to help continue the search, which makes the film seem so real but not real at the same time, you know? Hey, great film. And I say aliens, that was definitely an alien, you know? I'm the alien guy, I'm just saying. Number 3, Dashcam. Dashcam is a 2021 computer screen horror film directed by Rob Savage and written by Gemma Hurley, Jed Shepard, and Savage. The entire film is shot from the perspective of the main character's handheld iPhone or the Dashcam in her car as she live streams her actions for viewers whose comments are displayed. Kinda hard to read and watch at the same time, but it really makes it scarier, trust me. The film, of course, is produced by Blumhouse Productions, so you know it's gonna slap. Dashcam premiered at the 2021 Toronto International Film Festival in September 2021, where it was named second runner-up for the People's Choice Award. The plot. Annie Hardy is a right-wing internet personality who live streams from her car, making music and using her viewers' comments as lyrics. Tired of COVID-19 restrictions and homelessness in Los Angeles, Annie books a flight to London. There, she pays a visit to her former bandmate Stretch, who now works as a delivery driver. When she arrives at the restaurant, Annie is surprised to find it abandoned before she encounters the owner, who offers Annie huge money to apparently transport an old woman, Angela, to an undisclosed location. Annie accepts the offer, of course, and drives with Angela while live streaming everything to her fans. And this is where it gets terrifying. Angela then vanishes into a nearby forest, and the group find her standing atop of a tree, to which Angela just floats down to the ground before attacking the group, showing them her supernatural abilities. Angela hunts them down, and after a terrifying scene that I'm not going to spoil, a humanoidish creature emerges out of Angela, where it now hunts for Annie.
Okay, Angela, this lady's gonna just take you to some friends, okay?
Nope.
Yeah, I would be saying a big nope, too. Hell no, I'm not driving some scary old lady in the middle of the night. That's like rookie horror film nonsense right there. Great movie though, great movie. Very scary. Number 2, Spree. Spree is a 2020 American comedy horror film directed by Eugene Kotlyarenko. The gonzo-style satire follows a social media obsessed rideshare driver played by Joe Keery, who we all love. In an attempt to become viral, he live streams himself murdering his passengers. Ooh, it's a challenge of a role, I'd say. The film also stars David Arquette, Kyle Mooney, and Misha Barton. It was executively produced by Drake. That's saying something right there. Spree premiered in 2020 at the 2020 Sundance Film Festival and was released theatrically on video on demand in 2020. The film received mixed reviews, though critics praised Keery's performance and the film's premise. I really like this movie. I think it's a good representation of 2020 culture, you know? With phones in our hand every second, everybody trying to go viral, doing anything you can for clout. This movie does just that. Okay. Here's the plot. A young man named Kurt is obsessed with being a social media star and becoming viral. Kurt finds work as a driver for a rideshare app called Spree, then fits out his car with cameras and begins a new live stream titled The Lesson, where he instructs viewers on how to become famous on social media. Kurt starts picking up passengers one by one and killing them off with poison that he politely offers riders, as well as a bunch of creative clout-chasing performance heinous acts. You'll see. Kurt is then stopped by 2 police officers who grow suspicious of him. It's revealed that Kurt's murders have already become public, with Kurt being nicknamed the Rideshare Killer. After police are unable to identify him, Kurt tries to flee, but he too is pursued by police, forcing him to crash his car through a homeless camp. With Kurt's murders becoming more well known online, Spree is temporarily shut down to allow an investigation to take place. Kurt tries to kill Jessie, the other character, but she pins him to the wall with her car and then in turn takes his phone and continues the social media presence which he started. Jessie then becomes a nationwide star after taking credit for Kurt's demise and capture surrounding the infamous rideshare killer. Yeah, I really like this movie. It's like super campy and over the top. It's serious at times, but also very gory. Joe Keery kills it with this role, and I feel like if you were needing a break from that Stranger Things character, yeah, we found it. You did very well, my friend. Very terrifying. And coming in at the number 1 spot, VHS 94. VHS 94 is a 2021 American found footage horror anthology film and the 4th installment in the VHS series. If you haven't seen these movies, they're great. Give them a shot. They're almost shot like a bunch of stories from the same era in one film. Like little mini true or false found footage movies that make the audience ask, is this campy or did this really happen? The film originates from a screenplay written by David Bruckner and Brad Miska. The overarching plot follows a police SWAT team who stumble upon a sinister cult compound and its collection of VHS tapes and what's on them. Following the series' cult origins around film festivals, VHS 94 has its world premiere at Fantastic Fest on September 26, 2021 and was also screened at the Beyond Fest on October 4th the same year. The film was released as a Shudder original film via Shudder, October 6, 2021, and later that month, Shudder announced that it had become the platform's biggest movie premiere in its history, with record-breaking viewership numbers. That's awesome. Horror movies? Let's go. It's great stuff. These films are awesome. Okay, here's some plots. A SWAT team gets a tip and investigates a prison cell-like haunted house with various static screens playing different found footage. The first is a Channel 6 news reporter, Holly Marciano, and her cameraman, Jeff. They are filming a story about the Rat Man, a local legend who has supposedly been living in the town's storm drains. After interviewing several citizens who have reportedly witnessed the creature to gain information, the duo descend into the storm drain where they find several homeless encampments. Where they find several homeless encampments. While filming, they are approached by a man covered in black goop slime, and he murmurs, "Ratma." They attempt to flee, but they are captured by other similar residents of the sewers. Yeah, I'm not gonna spoil anything else because I really like the VHS series and the mini stories that they do. They're absolutely terrifying. The vampire part is the scariest part. I'm not spoiling anything. Check it out.
Number 5, Midsommar. So, first up on our list of the scariest movies is gonna be Midsommar, a movie that may hold the record for the fastest time I have ever seen something become a classic. I think Midsommar became a horror movie classic roughly 30 seconds or so after we left the theater. And there are some out there who knock on Midsommar for not being enough of a horror movie, but I would like to say boo on you. I think that's mostly bogus, just because it takes place during the day, and because like Hereditary before it, Midsommar is that nice kind of elevated horror that doesn't just get your hair standing on end and your spine all chilled, but also manages to get under your skin and start to pick away at stuff you didn't even know you were insecure and scared about. Just a bit after Ari Aster had traumatized all of us out of ever looking at a stop sign the same way in Hereditary, we got Midsommar, which will ensure I will never look at a bear the same way ever again. While Hereditary picked apart at the foundations of a crumbling family, Midsommar instead takes us into watching a friend group and a young couple getting torn apart, both metaphorically, which is scary in a very esoteric way, and literally, which is scary in a wow, that's disgusting kind of way. After a horrific, sad tragedy claims the lives of most of young Danny's family, she and her boyfriend find themselves growing distant from one another. Things look like they're gonna change when her boyfriend Christian invites her to a Swedish commune with his classmates. What looks at first like an idyllic vacation quickly unravels when it seems that commune is a Swedish word meaning scary pagan human sacrifice call, and Danny finds herself at odds with a new family that seems to welcome her grief with open arms. Midsommar contrasts gorgeous visuals of the Swedish landscape with some of the most stomach-churning body horror I've seen in a Hollywood production recently. Do you know what a blood eagle is, my friends? If you don't, do yourself a favor and don't Google that, okay? And if you do, yeah, well, you just know how horrible that was in this movie, eh? I figured we've all seen Midsommar. It's non-stop scares, but somehow, if you haven't, let me be the 1000th person to tell you you should watch this movie. If you like spooky cult movies, this is probably one of the best out there. Just, don't be surprised if you can't bear some of the stuff that happens in this movie. That's a little pun about a bear. Now, my friends, if you're looking for more videos about horror movies you should watch, maybe some scary urban legends, stuff about SCPs, aliens, and just about anything freaky, well, subscribe to Top 5 Scary, because we got all of that and then some. Stay scared, stay subscribed. Number 4, Incantation. Coming up next on the list is gonna be Incantation. It's the most recent one on this list. It just came out, and I guarantee it's not like anything else you've seen, unless you're a huge fan of Taiwanese found footage cinema, in which case, yeah, it'll probably be pretty similar to that, because that's what it is. Right off the bat, Incantation invites the viewer to join in on it, with one of the characters breaking the fourth wall and directly asking the audience to say a prayer for her daughter, which I think is such a good hook to immediately get you into a movie. A little bit of audience interaction, and then forming the movie as a found footage horror movie made it seem that much more real, like you kind of forget that you're watching a production. It immerses you into the characters as much as a movie possibly could. A young woman named Lee Ronan reveals to us that years earlier she broke a religious taboo by spying on a secret ritual, and as such cursed herself and her bloodline. And when her daughter is born, she finds herself being haunted by a malevolent spirit. This movie is like a buffet plate of horror genres. If you like haunted house stuff, demon possession stuff, exorcisms, well, this movie brings all of that to the table and makes all of it gripping and horrifying. And if you like really inventive, metatextual, postmodern horror stuff, well, the framing device and the found footage elements really pump it all up, and I wouldn't dream of giving away the movie's twists, but it has some that you genuinely cannot possibly see coming that turn the whole experience on its head. And admittedly, maybe this is more me telling on myself for having a very Hollywood-esque kind of centralized North American horror movie palette, but it's very refreshing to see a story centered around people I don't see often in movies and a culture I don't see often in movies, somewhere I don't see often, making an already inventive script just feel that much more fresh, you know? Don't be afraid of the subtitles, and don't deprive yourself out of Incantation if you're looking for a great new cursed movie to watch. Just, if you want my advice, definitely say your prayers before and after watching, you know, just to be absolutely safe. Number 3, Killing of a Sacred Deer. Coming up next is going to be Killing of a Sacred Deer from Yorgos Lanthimos, who has one of my favorite names in cinema. I needed at least one really psychological horror movie on this list that I figured most of you probably haven't seen. Like all of Lanthimos' filmography, Sacred Deer is relentlessly weird. If you want to watch a movie that's going to leave you shaking, sweating, and asking yourself in your dark living room, what the hell did I just watch? Then you're gonna love Sacred Deer, okay? A heart surgeon named Steven, played by Colin Farrell. He's got a perfect life, 2 children, a successful career, and a very, very strange relationship with a mysterious young boy named Martin, played excellently by Barry Keoghan. We learn that years earlier, Steven had operated on Martin's father, but failed to save his life, and since then has kind of taken Martin in and kept an extremely odd paternal relationship with the exceedingly strange boy, who seems determined to force himself into Steven's family by any means necessary. As Martin begins to uncomfortably ingratiate himself with Steven's children, their health starts to worsen in mysterious, paranormal ways that hospitals can't explain, and it seems like Martin knows a lot more than he's letting on. This movie feels like an actual honest-to-God nightmare that somebody filmed. It's kind of hard to describe. It doesn't really have jump scares. It's got next to no gore. There's like blood, I guess, but most of the horror comes from this unending dread, this creeping, unsettling feeling in the air that everything you're seeing is wrong. Every single line of dialogue in this movie does not sound like it was written or performed by a human being. I know that sounds like a bad movie, but everyone is performing so well that the atmosphere is like a mile thick. Everyone just talks in a way that's not in a way you expect or you're used to. It seems like everyone's from a different planet ever so slightly. It's so surreal, it feels like an extended dream. There's a scene where Barry Keoghan's character is describing how he and his dad used to eat spaghetti the same way, by swirling noodles around a fork, and it's a very innocuous conversation, but the whole thing around it is so chilling, it genuinely had me sweating. If there's anyone who thinks Barry Keoghan isn't gonna make a good Joker, please watch this movie and then come right back to me. This guy is so good at being a lunatic. This one is not gonna be for everybody, I'll be straight up. If you like your horror a little bit artsy, like if Midsommar and Hereditary totally spoke to you, Killing of a Sacred Deer probably will as well. But, you know, if you're looking for something with like a guy in a mask who's breaking through windows and pulling on Jamie Lee Curtis's ponytail, this might not be up your alley. If you're looking for something splattery and splashy, well, it might just leave you extremely confused. Number 2, The Ritual. Coming up next on the list is going to be The Ritual from director David Bruckner, part of the horror collective that contributed to the cult classic found footage movie VHS, as well as directing 2020's The Lighthouse. The Ritual is one you can find on Netflix, and if you don't load it up after this video immediately, we're probably gonna have an issue. A group of college friends meet together after a shocking tragedy claims the life of one of their friends in a random robbery. Now, before the incident, they all had made plans to hike in the woods of Sweden, and let me just pause here for a minute. Is it a bit odd that 2 of the scariest horror movies made in the last 10 years involve a group of friends going out on a vacation to Sweden? If I'm learning anything from this list in contemporary filmmaking, it's that it's not nearly as welcoming as I thought. But I digress. The friends go to Sweden in their late friend's honor and discover that it is really not the best of ideas when things turn horribly wrong very quickly. Discovering an elk gutted out in the woods, they suspect there is a lot more out in those woods than just the wildlife. The Ritual is kind of like if the Blair Witch Project and the Wicker Man loved each other very dearly and had a beautiful baby and they let it play with Midsommar on the weekends. You get to watch a friend group at odds with themselves, lost in the woods, deal with mysteries of a secret Nordic cult, and it's got lots of good, creepy, supernatural cult stuff, and I don't want to spoil it too much, but I'll say it's got one of the coolest monsters put to film in recent memory I can think of. I would love a statue of that thing. And finally, coming in at our number 1 spot is going to be The Mist. Directed by Frank Darabont, who is probably the king of adapting Stephen King's works into films, having directed The Shawshank Redemption, The Green Mile, and The Mist. Interestingly though, unlike The Green Mile and The Shawshank Redemption, which are both very accurate depictions of the source material, The Mist deviates a little bit. It's got an alternate ending which is way darker than the original story, but here's the catch. Stephen King actually says he prefers it, which has to be the highest compliment possible. If the guy who wrote the original terrifying story can watch the movie and say, you did a better job. He certainly didn't say that about Stanley Kubrick. If you don't know the plot of The Mist, like all Stephen King movies, it takes place in a small town in Maine when a massive thunderstorm has descended upon the community. It focuses on a group of ordinary people caught in a grocery store locked in as a mysterious mist starts to encircle the town, and strange creatures from beyond this world start to complicate things. This thing is very tight, focusing on what happens to normal people when put up against the most overwhelming odds imaginable, trapped with eldritch horrors threatening them just outside their little sanctuary of suburbia, and trying to protect your family from all the danger. It is tense as all get out. If you like monsters and creative monsters too, oh man is The Mist a treat. They hide them well, in the mist. You never get too good a look at any of them, but that wouldn't be much fun. The way they do it here, letting you catch glimpses here and there, and letting your mind fill in all the horrible details and all the tentacle abominations. Oh baby, that's horror at its finest. Reminds me a bit of Cloverfield in that regard. The Mist might not be the scariest movie ever made, but it is an absolutely great one that is often forgot about sometimes when we discuss great horror movies. It's out there on Netflix, so you got no reason not to. In fact, I tried pretty hard to curate this list of mostly stuff that was streaming on Netflix so you could watch them after I was done talking about it. Don't say the casual Crypt Keeper doesn't do anything nice for you now.
The Conjuring movies have definitely taken the world by storm, creating a world of horror that leaves us delightfully terrified with every movie. Now that The Nun 2 has been released, let's talk about where we left off, and if you're feeling like a horror binge, how to watch the movies in chronological order. I haven't seen the movies in a while, so I'm going to attempt to recap these action-packed movies from my memory of them, and with a little help from the Conjuring fandom. So if I miss anything or mess it up, let me know, or head on over to the Conjuring fandom and make some edits. First up, we have The Nun. Released in 2018, The Nun follows the story of Sister Irene and her attempt to stop a demonic presence in a monastery in 1952 Romania. Set up in the Middle Ages, a duke had opened a rift to hell, which had been resealed for years thanks to a vial, but it began to crack due to bombings in World War II. Since then, the nuns living there would take turns praying to ensure that it stayed closed. In 1952, Sister Irene and Father Burke traveled to the monastery to investigate the death of a nun who took her own life. It is revealed that Valak has escaped, and it attacks Irene. Irene and the other nuns attempt to pray it away. Irene then realizes that all of the other nuns were ghosts who had been killed by Valak, and the nun that had taken her own life did so to stop Valak from possessing a human host. Sister Irene takes her vows, and Father Burke makes her a professed nun. Then, the group goes to get the vial to seal Valak away, but Irene gets separated and Valak is able to possess Irene and attacks Frenchie. Frenchie smears the contents of the vials on Irene, releasing Valak's hold on her. Valak attempts to drown Irene, but Frenchie gives Irene the vial, which Irene then spits on Valak, which then banishes Valak and closes the rift. Frenchie reveals his name as Maurice. The group buries the nuns and takes their leave from the monastery, glad that they sealed the demon away. However, before the rift was sealed, Valak was able to attach themselves to Maurice. Next up, released in 2017 as a prequel to Annabelle, taking place in 1955, is Annabelle Creation. Samuel and Esther Mullins welcome an orphanage of girls, along with Sister Charlotte, after having lost their 7-year-old daughter, Annabelle, called B, 12 years earlier. The first night the girls are staying over, a girl named Janice unleashes a doll that was possessed by an evil spirit 12 years earlier, Annabelle. Annabelle had been locked in the closet of B. The closet was covered in Bible verses. Over the next while, the doll wreaks havoc on the group, putting Janice in a wheelchair, possessing Janice, and taking both Samuel and Esther's lives, before a big final fight ending with a possessed Janice and Annabelle doll being locked in the closet. The Annabelle doll is collected as evidence, but Janice escapes to another orphanage and is then adopted by a family. But uses the name Annabelle. 12 years later, Janice Annabelle starts a cult and ends the lives of her adoptive parents. The family next door hears the screams and the husband goes to investigate. This leads directly into the Annabelle movie. The Nun 2 was released on September 8th and takes place in 1956. Because this movie only came out a few days ago, I don't want to spoil anything for you guys. I guess we'll just have to head over to the theaters and buy some $30 popcorn to find out what Sister Irene and Valak have in store for us in The Nun 2. Annabelle was released on October 3rd, 2014 and takes place in 1967. John gives his pregnant wife Mia a beautiful porcelain doll, which is brought alive only days later when Janice Annabelle and her boyfriend break into their house. The boyfriend's life is ended by a firearm from John, and Janice Annabelle takes her own life after writing on the wall whilst holding the doll, and a drop of red liquid from Janice Annabelle lands in the eye of the doll. John and Mia move, and Mia gives birth to their daughter Leah. Annabelle, the doll, begins terrorizing the family, so Mia goes to a bookstore in an attempt to find answers, where she meets Evelyn. The doll attempts to take their baby's soul, but Evelyn sacrifices herself to save everyone in the family. They don't see the doll again. The movie closes with a mother buying Annabelle in a store. Next up is The Conjuring, which had its 10-year anniversary just a few months ago. Released on July 19th, 2013, it has definitely gained insane popularity, and it began this incredible horror franchise. The Conjuring takes place in 1971. Lorraine and Ed Warren are summoned to a family's secluded home to investigate claims that it is being haunted by supernatural entities. Lorraine notices that a presence has latched onto the family, but needs approval from the Catholic Church to do an exorcism. It is revealed that a witch cursed the land that the house was built on, and there had been a large number of lives claimed on the plot of land. Lorraine discovers that the witch's spirit lives on, and her goal is to possess mothers and force them to take their children's life. Carolyn, the mother, becomes possessed and they perform an exorcism on her, which fails, but Lorraine is able to draw the demon out. The movie closes with the music box that Ed and Lorraine had taken from the house and placed in their artifact room, playing on its own. Annabelle Comes Home was released in 2019 and takes place in the very late 60s or early 70s. The Warrens brought Annabelle to their home after 2 nurses claimed of the doll's violent activities in their apartment. The Warrens stored it in their artifact room, and then they went away, leaving their daughter, Judy, under the care of her babysitter, Mary. Mary's friend Daniela shows up unexpectedly, wanting to find a way to contact her recently departed father, so she unlocks the artifact room. Daniela opens Annabelle's case and forgets to close it on the way out. Annabelle releases many spirits that were in that room. The group begins to be tormented by them. Daniela is possessed, but they are able to lock Annabelle back into the case after the ghost of a priest, who had attached himself to Judy, helped them out. The spirits all went back to rest, and the Warrens returned home and all was well. The Curse of La Llorona was released in 2019 and takes place in 1973. The setup, which is in 1663, shows a son giving a necklace to his mother. Later, he saw his mother drowning his brother in the river, and then he ran away scared, but unfortunately he was caught as well and met the same fate. In 1973, Los Angeles, 2 boys were found locked in a room by social service workers Anna. The boys and their mother Patricia begged the caseworker to leave them there, but the boys were moved to an orphanage. They later encountered a woman in a white dress, and they too were found drowned in a river the next morning. La Llorona then attempted to drown Anna's child. Former priest Rafael Olvera comes to the house to aid in getting rid of La Llorona. After a long fight, Anna is able to destroy the spirit by impaling it with a cross made from a fire tree, which was the same kind of tree that was beside the river La Llorona had originally drowned her own children in. The Conjuring 2 was released in 2016 and takes place in 1977. Ed and Lorraine Warren travel to London to help out a family, the Hodgsons, who are being haunted by a spirit. Lorraine is also having many upsetting visions. Ed believes that traveling to London is going to help prevent the outcome of them. The pair also believe that they are meant to be going to London. The Hodgsons' youngest daughter Janet had been hearing things. When Lorraine arrived, the ghost of Bill Wilkins appears, who was a resident of the house, along with Valak. After many unsettling events, the Warrens are able to condemn Valak back to hell, and they return home with the Crooked Man turntable, which is placed in their artifact room, right across from Annabelle. The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It, is the last movie on this list and was released on June 4th, 2021. It takes place in 1981. Ed and Lorraine Warren attend the exorcism of 8-year-old David Glatzel. The demon possesses the body of Arn Johnson, which Ed witnesses as he has a heart attack. Possessed Arn takes the life of his landlord. The case becomes the first to use demonic possession as a defense, and the Warrens begin to investigate how David Glatzel became possessed in the first place. With the help of a priest, they learn the curse had been purposefully passed down from a witch's totem, which had led to the possession of David. The pair travel down to Massachusetts and discover another case of a killer being possessed, and taking the life of someone in the same way that David had. They return home and discover that to stop the curse, they must destroy the altar in which the occultist operate. Lorraine discovers that the occultist was the daughter of the priest that had helped them earlier on in the film, and she heads to destroy the altar, which is in underground tunnels. The priest is killed by the occultist while helping Lorraine, and Ed is possessed briefly by a summoned demon, but Lorraine manages to convince him to fight back, ending the possession. Then, they destroy the altar, and the occultist is killed by the demon she had summoned. The Warrens place a cup from the altar in their artifact room, right by a painting of Valak and the Annabelle doll.
Number 5, you're next. Hey, family dinners are always a bit awkward, aren't they? You know, trying to get the gravy passed to you, trying to avoid an argument with your uncle about your career, and trying to elude the vicious sickos that are hunting you and your family for sport. Your Next is a 2011 slasher directed by Adam Wingard, who also blessed us with Godzilla vs. Kong, one of the finest films ever made. Made on a humble $1 million budget, Your Next is a horror movie that brings it to the absolute basics. One house, one troubled family, and 3 very dangerous psychopaths. An estranged family is meeting for a reunion at their summer home in the rural Deep South, and newcomer to the family, Erin, is nervous to be introduced officially as her boyfriend's long-term partner. Now, tensions are high enough with the usual family drama before the first crossbow bolt pierces the window, as the family is being hunted by a relentless pack of bloodthirsty animal mask-wearing lunatics who seem to be doing this whole thing just for kicks. Watch the family fall apart under pressure, metaphorically and uncomfortably literally, as they're picked off one by one by their sick predators, until one of them starts to rise up unexpectedly against their tormentors. Now, if you were a fan of the Hotline Miami games, this is probably as close as you're ever going to get to a movie for that 80s splatter feel and all the animal mask wearing lunatics. Your Next feels like a movie that got time traveled from 1984 in the best way. It's a throwback to the golden age of B horror movies. Wet, gross, stupid, and in the darkest ways, really funny. This movie's almost a dysfunctional family comedy, if you can call it that. It's sinister, sick, gruesome, and hilarious, has an absolutely great sense of style, really cool soundtrack, and I guarantee you the main song from the movie is gonna get stuck in your head for weeks afterwards. Definitely check Your Next out if you're looking for some fluffy horror fun. I've got a DVD at home if you want to borrow it. Now, hey ghouls and goblins, you already know that the best place for the scary video. Hey ghouls and goblins, you already know the best place for scary videos on the web is right here, but if somehow you didn't know that, always a good time to learn, so why don't you subscribe so you never miss a scare. Number 4. The Color Out of Space. When we think H.P. Lovecraft, we tend to think of giant squid monsters and incomprehensible madness. Well, this movie's got one of those in folds, and it's not the squid monster. The Color Out of Space is a 2019 horror movie directed by Richard Stanley, adapting the H.P. Lovecraft story of the exact same name, but modernizing it slightly, bringing it up to the 21st century. The story details a father moving his family to his late father's farm, escaping the bright lights and humdrum of city life, moving to his hometown of Arkham, the exceedingly cursed city from Lovecraft's writings. What should be a breath of fresh air and lovely times in the cottage turns to a nightmare when an asteroid falls to the farm, releasing with it a mysterious color that seeps into the farmland. A color out of space, if you will. It affects the minds of everyone around the farm, all the animals, and begins to seep into the water and drive everyone to incomprehensible madness. Nick Cage plays the patriarch of the Gardner family, and let me tell you, there could not possibly have been a better actor for the lead in a movie about slowly going mad. I mean, Nick Cage on his absolute best day already seems like he's about 2 screws short of absolute madness, so watching him in this is a treat. You spend the entire time wondering if the insanity is taking him over and consuming his brain, or if that's just how Nicolas Cage talks and he thinks he's doing a New England accent right now. Color Out of Space builds really slowly, leaving you on edge the entire time, and when the madness sets in, it sets in hard as you painfully watch the farmstead fall, desperate that maybe, just maybe, someone will pull through against the immeasurable horror of some entity beyond the cosmos. It captures Lovecraft's writing effortlessly and brings it to the modern age flawlessly, with all the blood and insanity you could hope for. Number 3. The Void. Our next entry on this list is The Void, a 2016 horror flick by Steven Kostanski, another Lovecraft horror movie. Your host has a little bit of a bias, and this one's Canadian made, so I have to include it based on that alone. It also totally rocks, so there is that. The Void is another flick that feels like it time traveled through the mid-80s, and maybe it's just my personal taste, but that is very much a good thing. The Void seems like the kind of thing John Carpenter would have slapped his name on. A small-town deputy has his night wildly disturbed when he finds someone suffering from violent injuries, and after taking him to the local hospital, finds himself trapped in the hospital with his ex-wife, a nurse, who's dealing with a crisis of her own, as the hospital is being overrun by an onslaught of mysterious injuries and madness. The 2 estranged lovers find themselves caught in a blood-soaked conflict between a sinister cult and some entity that appears able to revive the dead, albeit a bit twisted into horrifying monstrosities of flesh and bone. Now, if you're like me and you think The Thing is the greatest horror movie ever made, The Void feels like it could be its unofficial sequel. It's better than the actual sequel prequel to The Thing that they made. The special effects on the monsters are fantastic. If you're the kind of ghoul who loves puppets, prosthetics, and gallons worth of corn syrup blood, The Void has everything you are looking for in those 3 spades. And the plot is fun, and it has some good twists and turns, but let's be honest here. You're watching this one because it's got very gross monsters and really cool Lovecraft-inspired mythos of cults and a great god beyond the stars. You want my advice? Grab a friend or two, order the largest, greasiest pizza your local favorite spot has, grab a 2-liter of something carbonated, and have a great Friday night with this one. The Void to me is what a good horror movie should be. Gross, scary, a little stupid, and a ton of fun. Number 2, Hush. Okay, enough movies about incomprehensible horrors from beyond the stars. Let's reel it in a bit, and let's get back to some comprehensible horror. Home invasion. Lock those doors. Oh, sorry, I forgot to turn the volume up. Hush is a 2016 slasher home invasion movie coming to us from Blumhouse horror icon Mike Flanagan, director of a ton of amazing horror projects like Oculus, Dr. Sleep, Midnight Mass, The Haunting of shows, and Hush is no exception to that rule. A deaf and mute horror writer, that's why I did that before, who lives alone with her cat in the woods with a few isolated neighbors around her, becomes the unwilling target in the most dangerous game when a twisted hunter decides to make her his prey. After hunting her neighbor with a crossbow, he sets his sight on her next. When he learns that his next victim is deaf and mute, it seems like he finds himself thrilled at the possibility of a challenge. Now, Hush could have very easily just been your run-of-the-mill slasher home invasion movie, but it stands a lot taller than that with some incredibly fantastic sound design. I mean, I would hope so, given the premise of the movie and the name of the movie. The movie is so tense and saves its sounds really effectively for when it knows it's going to be the scariest. Makes it a lot scarier than the usual horror movies with a bombastic booming soundtrack and tons of scare hordes. It lets you really breathe in the tension. The cat and mouse game between the protagonist Maddie and the unnamed hunter feels deeply personal, putting you smack dab in the middle of it, chewing your fingernails the entire time as you hope for the best. Please check out Hush. Now, number 1, Green Room. Coming in at our number 1 spot is one of my favorite horror thrillers of all time, Green Room. An A24 horror classic before that was even a cool thing to describe your movie as. A failing Midwestern punk band are trying to hit it big while traveling the Northwest, barely scraping by on instant ramen and van life when they agree to play a gig at a rural roadhouse. Absolutely thrilled at the prospect of getting paid for once, the band takes the gig without asking any questions, only to swiftly discover upon arriving that they are in bad company. The bar is ran and owned by a skinhead gang who don't take kindly to them whatsoever. After the bassist witnesses a crime in the eponymous Green Room, the band is trapped by the gang who refuses to let them leave. Alive. From here, the movie turns into a sort of reverse home invasion as the band tries desperately to escape the clutches of the gang by any means necessary. Green Room is tense. You are going to feel like you are trapped in there with them. If you've ever survived a local DIY show basement, then the sights of Green Room will look pretty familiar to you. Setting a high-octane horror movie in such a hostile environment that you'll recognize makes it feel all the more real. You know, I've seen countless horror movies in haunted houses, but I can't name that many in a bar basement. Green Room is horror at some of its best, taking a concept I guarantee you haven't seen before and exploring it beyond just a simple bloody slasher. Fantastic camera work, dark humor, and a gripping plot with lovable characters and truly hateable villains. We are 3 paragraphs into me talking about this, and I haven't even dropped the biggest bomb, which is that the leader of the skinhead gang is played by Sir Patrick Stewart in one of his most unhinged roles ever since maybe American Dad. I'd say he steals this thing, but honestly everybody delivers. Anton Yelchin also delivers one of the best performances of his career as the band's weary, tortured bassist. Go into Green Room expecting a super tense, shockingly gory, but amazing horror movie if you can brave it. Just make sure you get a stamp on your wrist so you can leave.
Number 5 on this list is The Last Winter. The Last Winter is a horror movie that was released in 2008 and stars Ron Perlman, James LaGrosse, and Connie Britton. The movie is directed by Larry Fessenden and is centered around the brutal environmental elements that come with winter. The plot description is as follows. Sent to evaluate the environmental impact of oil drilling in the Arctic, James Hoffman clashes with the drilling crew's chief who wants to get the job done. Strange events begin to plague the crew and they are soon cut off from the outside world. Hoffman and the crew feel the force of Mother Nature's wrath and there's no visible escape. In all honesty, this is one of the few on the list that I haven't seen, but based off of the many reviews, it seems like the perfect winter horror film. Den of Geek writes, "The Last Winter benefits enormously from its massive and utterly flat Icelandic locations and the sense of isolation and emptiness that they provide. The cold is also an ever-present threat, making us aware that nature can be a formidable danger even without manifesting itself as ancient, angry spirits." And personally, I really like this idea for a horror film because rather than making winter just part of the environment, it actually becomes the main obstacle for these characters. And I imagine that it triggers a bunch of other things as well. It's one thing to watch a horror movie about some crazy monster, but it's a whole other thing to watch one about the environment. This is something that could actually happen. Like maybe one day we're in a plane and it has to have a crash landing, and just like that, now we're stuck in the winter wilderness having to fend for ourselves. I'm going to be making an effort to watch this movie very soon, and from what the internet is telling me, I recommend that you do the same. Number 4 on this list is Frozen. Alright, so I know what you're thinking. When did Disney's blockbuster musical turn into a thriller survivor film? And I'm here to tell you that it didn't. Anna and Elsa are still happily building snowmen. The characters in this movie, though, aren't quite as jolly. Directed by Adam Green and released in 2010, the film stars Sean Ashmore, Emma Bell, and Kevin Zegers, who play 3 friends that get stuck in a very dangerous spot. The premise is super simple. As a winter storm approaches, 3 people become stranded on a chairlift high above the ground after a ski resort closes for the night. For those fellow skiers out there, I know that we've all had this thought before. What if I get stranded on a chairlift? What the heck am I gonna do? This is the question that these 3 friends have to deal with the entire movie. What makes this thing more difficult for them is the fact that it's blistering cold out, and sitting high in the air in a chairlift isn't really keeping them super warm. Also, the fact that on the ground there are some very hungry and very aggressive wolves waiting for a nice tasty meal. Ed Koch, who's a top critic on Rotten Tomatoes, writes, "Frozen is a tour de force, not because of exceptional performances by the actors, but rather the outstanding directing by Adam Green, who also wrote the script. The script gave Green a limited area within which to work, and he carried it off superbly. I will give you a fair warning, this movie is pretty gory, but I feel like that's to be expected from a winter horror movie involving a pack of hungry wolves." Number 3 on this list is Misery. Misery is a very simple horror movie that's so riveting and scary due to the performance by the actors on the screen. The movie's based on a Stephen King book and is arguably one of the few times that the film actually outdid the novel. The description of the movie, according to Chris Sasquay, is a cozy shelter in the woods during the winter sounds like the ideal cottagecore vibe, except when you're author Paul Sheldon and you're trapped with a superfan. By all appearances, Annie Wilkes is a quirky teddy bear, but there's a reason as to why acting legend Kathy Bates won an Oscar for her performance. Annie is a complicated villain, one who is just as much a danger to herself as she is to others. Don't get in her bad side, or you'll get a lesson on what hobbling means, all the while soothing classical music is being played to ease its pain. It's simple horror movies like this that really pay dividends. 2 people stuck in a cottage together during the winter, and one of them loses their minds. The film is very highly rated, and even though it was made over 30 years ago, it still holds up as being a quality watch. It might not have the same emphasis on winter as some of the other entries on this list, but I guarantee if you watch it at your grandma's house or a cottage like the one in the movie, then it's gonna hit really close to home. Number 2 on this list is The Thing. The Thing has had a remake of it before, but in this video we're referring specifically to the 1982 version of The Thing, directed by John Carpenter. This movie might actually be my personal favorite horror movie of like all time. The movie stars Kurt Russell, and it's a brilliant example of horror movies from the 80s. The plot description from Google is, in remote Antarctica, a group of American research scientists are disturbed at their base camp by a helicopter shooting at a sled dog. When they take in the dog, it brutally attacks both human beings and canines in the camp, and they discover that the beast can assume the shape of its victims. A resourceful helicopter pilot and the camp doctor lead the camp crew in a desperate, gory battle against the vicious creature before it picks them all off one by one. Winter is in the air in this movie. Being in Antarctica, the researching crew is consistently getting bombarded with the effects of the cold and their snowy environment. Whether it's communication systems breaking down, vehicles freezing, or just generally getting snowed in, winter is definitely an obstacle for our protagonists. The one knock against this movie is that the special effects, they don't really hold up. But I honestly kind of love that. They look like special effects from the 80s, and there's something kind of comforting about that to me. Also, the entire premise of the alien or creature being one of your friends is really fun. It makes you think about your own home and your family and wonder how would you respond if one of them wasn't who they said they were. Basically, this movie is the plot to the video game Among Us, but it just does it so perfectly in my opinion. Definitely recommend giving it a watch if you're looking for a fun winter horror themed movie to help you get through the cold. Number 1 on this list is The Shining. You know, I almost didn't include this one because I feel like everyone watching this video already knows about it, but I just couldn't keep it off the list. The Shining is often regarded as one of the best horror movies of all time. Released in 1980, the horror flick stars Jack Nicholson, Shelley Duvall, and is directed by Stanley Kubrick. The movie is based off of one of Stephen King's most famous novels of the same name. The movie, according to Google, is about how Jack Torrance becomes winter caretaker at the isolated Overlook Hotel in Colorado, hoping to cure his writer's block. He settles in along with his wife Wendy and his son Danny, who is plagued by psychic premonitions. As Jack's writing goes nowhere and Danny's visions become more disturbing, Jack discovers the hotel's dark secrets and begins to unravel into a homicidal maniac hell-bent on terrorizing his family. What this description fails to inform you of, though, is the environment outside the hotel. It's the dead of winter in Colorado, and that aspect really plays into the whole movie. The characters get snowed in, and that's why simply leaving isn't an option. Similarly to some of the other movies on this list, the feeling of isolation due to the blizzarding outside is shown throughout the whole movie. This really adds to the scare factor because the safe inside that's keeping you warm, well, it really isn't that safe at all. Jack Nicholson is also marvelous in this movie, and the journey his character goes on is brilliant and really chilling to watch. Frankly, this isn't just a winter horror movie that you should watch, but if you're a lover of horror and you haven't seen this one, then it needs to go on your list. Sean T on Rotten Tomatoes puts it beautifully. Chilling, haunting, and unforgettable. The Shining is a horror masterpiece that radiates some of the finest filmmaking of all time.
Number 5. The Lighthouse. From visionary director Robert Eggers comes The Lighthouse, a harrowing fable that teaches us the importance of respecting personal boundaries and respecting seabirds. Eggers is one of my favorite modern horror directors, whose work sits a cut above the most usual horror fare with The Witch, The Lighthouse, and The Northman, which isn't quite horror unless you're terrified of Norway. The Lighthouse is unlike any other scary movies you've seen. Actually, it's probably unlike most movies you've seen. It's kind of hard to define The Lighthouse under one genre. It's unsettling and definitely makes me feel all heebly-jeebly watching it, but it isn't horror in the traditional sense. There's no monsters or slashers, just two men, a lighthouse, a whole lot of seagulls, and enough cabin fever-induced madness to shake a lobster at. A rookie lighthouse keeper, played by Robert Pattinson, is assigned to keep a lighthouse on a small isolated island off the coast of New England, under the supervision of the island's crusty old master, Willem Dafoe. Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson are some of the best working actors out there right now, and the two of these titans absolutely show up for this, carrying this two-headed character piece on their backs and speaking in some of the most hilariously memorable accents ever put to film. Seriously, Willem Dafoe's old nautical piratical accent in this thing needs to be taught in acting schools. I would do an impression, but I won't do it justice. The film is shot beautifully, the whole thing seeming like a mix between a bad dream and an avant-garde theater production, leaving you asking the entire time if anything you're seeing can be trusted, if any of it's even happening, or if the whole thing is all just one twisted nightmare between two very lonely, isolated men. Now, I can't say for sure if they went nuts because they weren't subscribed to Top 5 Scary, but I'm willing to bet that a little bit of entertainment from the best scary videos channel on the web might have helped some of that madness. So subscribe, maybe. Number 4. Annihilation. I've talked a bit about Annihilation before on this channel, and I will continue to do so until Annihilation gets the respect it deserves. That's my mission. I've never forgiven the movie-going populace for not seeing this one in theaters. Annihilation came to us from director and writer Alex Garland, who also gave us Ex Machina, a fantastic movie about having a crush on a robot. Annihilation is a cosmic horror story detailing the effects of after an asteroid crashes to Earth, and a mysterious alien presence known as the Shimmer begins to manifest across a quarantine zone in a forest outside an army base. Everything the Shimmer touches starts to blend together. Biological life merging, double helixes swirling in a big cosmic gumbo. The film is hauntingly beautiful as it is terrifying. Our protagonist Lena, played by Natalie Portman, is a US Army veteran who lost her husband in an unrelated combat mission. One day he shows up on her doorstep, convulsing violently, leading Lena towards the Shimmer. Learning her husband was involved, she ventures forward with a group of fellow researchers and soldiers to uncover what lies at the heart of the Shimmer, what's causing it, and if it can be stopped. The film is a visual treat with its lush vistas and uniquely terrifying monster designs. I've talked about Annihilation Bear before, and I will take any opportunity to talk about Annihilation Bear. I love Annihilation Bear. Slap a photo of him back there for me. Annihilation is the perfect kind of horror movie, simultaneously exploring complex themes of depression, grief, humanity's inherent nature and propensity towards self-destructive behavior, but it also asks even bigger questions like, wouldn't it be really yucky if a bear had a human skull inside its head that screamed like a dying human while it was roaring? Get you a horror movie that can do both, okay? Number 3, Jacob's Ladder. While the first 2 entries on our list were pretty recent and well received, I want to throw it back a couple decades for our next entry and highlight a cult classic that could always use a little bit more love. Jacob's Ladder details the story of Jacob Singer, a Vietnam veteran who 4 years later, after returning home from the war, struggles to readjust to his normal life. Not helping matters much, no doubt, is the fact that Jacob keeps seeing horrifying monstrosities surrounding him every day. It seems as if since he's come home, nothing has ever been the same. The film shows us life through Jacob's tormented eyes. As he tries to navigate through healing and overcoming his personal demons, he is constantly haunted by real-life demons that seem to have a very vested interest in him. Matters only serve to get a lot more confusing when Jacob learns that other members of his platoon, back from his army days, have all been suffering similar things, reporting seeing the same monsters and being haunted. Desperate to find the truth, Jacob seeks out the cause of what's happening to him and his old friends, and ends up descending down a path of madness, learning things no man ever should. Worth noting is just how influential Jacob's Ladder is, serving as one of the direct inspirations for the legendary Silent Hill series of games, with Silent Hill 2 in particular taking major inspiration from the film's plotline, monsters, twists, right down to the protagonists even wearing the exact same outfit as a little homage. Jacob's Ladder is a little older than some of the other entries on this list. It is absolutely worth a watch and still worth your time. A great performance out of Tim Robbins and one of the most wild twist-ending horror movies ever had. A bunch have tried to copy this. I'm sure you've seen a million hack writers copy it, but no one did it as cool as when Jacob's Ladder did it, so there. And actually thinking about it, I shouldn't even mention a twist, so there was no twist. Everything in Jacob's Ladder happens very literally. Go into it knowing that, okay? Number 2, Sinister. Moving. It's always stressful, isn't it? It's a huge pain. Well, Sinister is a 2012 horror film about an everyday family moving houses and all the trials and tribulations that come with that, like having to update your postal code on your information, unpacking your stuff and figuring out where all your art books are gonna go, and finding out that you moved into a house where a series of grisly rituals happened, sacrificing the previous family who lived here, and it's all been filmed and kept in a box upstairs in the attic. You know, just regular stuff the kids go through all the time. A struggling true crime novelist is trying to chase his glory days and intentionally moves into a house he knows where ghastly deaths took place in order to get close to the story so he can better research it and write a bestseller. He discovers a box in the attic full of film of all of the crimes and becomes obsessed with uncovering and exposing what happened, mostly so he can make a quick buck and get himself back on top again and make the late night circuit. As his obsession grows, it starts to affect his family and children in concerning ways, as everyone in the family starts acting stranger, having visions, hallucinations, and psychotic episodes, leaving you wondering if there is something much, much deeper going on in this house beyond a floundering author chasing a bestseller. Now, if you haven't seen this one, it's definitely worth going into this one as blind as you possibly can, because the twists and turns totally make this one. I spent the entire runtime of this propped up on the edge of the couch, my heart pounding, hoping that everything would turn out to be totally okay, even though I knew better. It's a horror movie, things never go great. The movie's got a stellar sense of dread that refuses to let go once it starts and only lets you breathe out once the credits roll, and even then, not for very long. Fantastic performances across the board, but a special shout out goes to Ethan Hawke, who makes this thing. Number 1, Hereditary. Now, there are a ton of movies that could easily have taken the number 1 spot here, and I thought pretty hard about making The Shining number 1, since, you know, it's kind of a classic, but I figured a lot of people have talked about The Shining, and then I remembered the experience of seeing Hereditary in a movie theater, and how it was the only time in my life I've ever seriously thought about leaving a movie theater because I thought I was gonna throw up on the seats. I was so scared and uncomfortable. Hereditary is a 2018 horror movie from visionary Ari Aster, who also gave us the psychological horror movie masterpiece Midsommar, so Aster really just bangs out the hits. Hereditary is about as peak A24 horror movie as it gets. One of those ones where the monster is really a metaphor for generational trauma and all that. After the grand matriarch of a Midwestern family passes away, her daughter and grandkids begin to uncover the cryptic and terrifying truth behind their ancestry, trying desperately to escape the sinister legacy they've inadvertently inherited. This movie is terrifying in the worst of ways. It's not just jump scares or tons of blood. No. This is elevated horror. This is not your usual horror story. It really zeroes in on the way too close to home horror of watching a family break apart. It is gut-wrenchingly painful to watch, preying on really specific kind of fears. It's gonna get its hooks in you and have your teeth grinding for the full 2 hours runtime and for ages afterwards. If you've seen this, I dare you to look at a pigeon, a stop sign, cheese wire, or a treehouse ever the same after this movie. And staggering performances. Toni Collette goes for absolute gold and delivers one of the best performances I've ever seen in a horror movie, full stop. She needs an Oscar for most upsetting crying I have ever heard in a film, which is a category she would have no competition in. Hereditary might not be the goriest film or even the scariest movie I've ever seen or most upsetting. There's a bunch of Takashi Miike or Park Chan-wook films that would probably take that. But Hereditary is definitely one of the most viscerally scary movies I've ever seen. The kind that just sits in your gut and makes you think about it all day, like you were living through an actual nightmare. Watch only if you're truly brave. I know I made it sound absolutely horrible, but it is a great movie. Just don't be surprised if you don't sleep that night. Number 5, Renfield. I feel like this is the rare movie where I honestly don't need to see a single trailer or even hear a single fact or tidbit of trivia to know I want to see it other than one piece of information. Nicolas Cage plays Dracula in this movie. Okay, moving on. We're gonna go on to number 4. No, okay, I'll actually fill it out a bit. We'll talk about Renfield just a little bit. As if you need anything more than Nicolas Cage plays Dracula. Renfield is an upcoming horror comedy featuring the immortal Count Dracula, and I think he's played by, I don't know, some like B-movie actor or something, and his humble manservant Renfield, who's been indebted to Dracula for centuries and is growing more than a bit weary of it. The two of them find themselves in modern Louisiana, a far cry away from the Romanian castles the Count is used to, and trouble arises when his servant finds himself falling in love with a police officer and comedy ensues. Interestingly, this script was inspired by a pitch from Robert Kirkman. You probably know him as the creator of The Walking Dead and Invincible, and was adapted into a screenplay. Kirkman isn't particularly known for his comedy, he's definitely known for his violence and gore, so it's a bit of a step outside his comfort zone. Alongside Nicolas Cage in the starring role is an all-star cast of actors. Nicholas Hoult from Mad Max, X-Men, The Menu is playing the eponymous Renfield. Awkwafina is the police officer he finds himself smitten with, and we got Parks and Rec alum and Sonic the Hedgehog voice actor Ben Schwartz as a mop. Nicolas Cage in comedies is some of his best. The unbearable weight of massive talent was a real surprise hit for me. Definitely go see that. Nick Cage plays himself, it's fantastic. And if you've somehow done yourself the utter disservice of never having seen Vampires Kiss, I implore you, please go get that done. Since Nick Cage plays a vampire in that, and it's absolutely hilarious. It's one of the most insane performances he's ever given. Renfield is set to drop in April, and you can absolutely believe I will be there front row day one. And if you're looking for more scary movie content, true tales of terror, fake fibs of frights, ghouls, goblins, aliens, cryptids, and everything freaky under the sun and above it, well, have I got something for you. Is this playlist on Top 5 Scary? Click through, stay scared, but most importantly, stay subscribed, because we're trying to get those numbers up. Now let's keep going. Number 4, Scream 6. It's always someone you know. Although Sidney Prescott managed to finally shake Woodsboro's most infamous resident, it seems that the ghost face can't be put down just that easily. Scream 6 is a big departure for the franchise, taking place in New York instead of a small Californian town, and may I just say it's high time. You know, slashers have been acting like they're too good to make movie sequels about their bad guys going to space or going to New York anymore. Jason did it, and I guess we just decided it just wasn't vogue anymore, but hogwash, I love seeing Ghostface running around the Big Apple. Ghostface on the subway. He's not supposed to be there. What are you doing there, man? The torch of Final Girl has been passed from Sidney Prescott to Tara Carpenter, introduced in the previous film and played by everybody's favorite goth girl, Jenna Ortega. Some other reprising roles include Hayden Panettiere coming back to play Kirby, a fan favorite character from Scream 4 whose death kind of left a bad taste in all of our mouths. So seeing her come back is actually super cool. There was a little Easter egg that confirmed she was alive in Scream 5, so I'm very excited to see her come back. I am a huge Scream fan if that is not coming across. We're also going to see Scream 5's protagonist Sam Carpenter return, and series mainstay Courtney Cox as Gale Weathers. No word on how horrifying her haircut's going to be. It would be a strange Scream film if it didn't have at least one cast member. Losing Neve Campbell and David Arquette definitely hurts, so one legacy member is more than enough. It's being directed by a duo of Tyler Gillett and Matt Bettinelli-Olpin, who worked together to make the last Scream movie, which honestly I thought was pretty good. I know some people had some issues with it, but I really liked it. They also made Ready or Not and had previously collaborated on the horror anthology series VHS. I'm personally super excited for Scream. Of all the slasher franchises out there, and I might land myself in some hot water with this hot take, but I think Scream is the most consistent. I think all of the Scream movies are pretty good. Even the worst Scream movie, Scream 3, is still like leagues better than most of the Halloween or Nightmare on Elm Street sequels. I just love Ghostface. I love that little goof. Although the loss of Wes Craven is definitely felt deeply, the previous film left me as a fan feeling like the series was being taken care of. The meta commentary was top notch, the scares were blood curdling, and there was a good amount of that Scream humor. I cannot wait to find out who's under that mask come March. Number 3, Evil Dead Rise. Groovy. Evil Dead has always been one of my absolute favorite horror movies ever. I love a horror comedy. If you couldn't tell already from my passion for Scream and my excitement for Renfield, and no one has ever done it better than Evil Dead 2, which might genuinely be one of my favorite movies of all time, let alone horror movies. I've probably seen that like 30 or so times. For all the quips, chainsaw arms, time travel, boomsticks, and gallons of fake blood, it's easy to forget that originally Evil Dead started as a low-budget horror movie trying to shock you to sickness with its gore and scares, and was trying to take itself a little bit seriously. The franchise tried to reboot itself about a decade ago, simply titled Evil Dead, hoping to recapture that same feeling of terror and a bunch of teens lost in a cabin. In a departure for the movies, Ash Williams and his chainsaw was nowhere to be found, and the comedy was completely absent unless you consider someone sawing their arm off with a bread cutter hilarious. And if you do, I don't really want to watch any like comedies with you. Well, Rise is set to try one more time at capturing that original gore fest. It seems like it's disconnected from the 80s films and the 2013 reboot and is doing its own thing. Evil Dead Rise sees a pair of estranged sisters reuniting in a cramped Los Angeles apartment, and their reunion is cut short after discovering a flesh-bound book, one Necronomicon Ex Mortis, in the sisters' building, which, well, if you know anything about Evil Dead, you know reading that book is very bad news and pretty much a guarantee that you're going to invite an army of flesh-eating demons into your world. If the trailer is anything to go by, expect Evil Dead Rise to be packed to bursting with gross-out gore, high-octane scares, and not a whole lot of one-liners. Bruce Campbell has an EP credit on this, but he's leaving the boomstick behind for this one. 3 seasons of Ash vs. the Evil Dead was more than enough for him and more than enough for me, so I'm just excited to see some new Evil Dead content regardless. The trailer was super promising and already had me scared, and if they can do that on a video I'm watching on my phone, I cannot even imagine how much popcorn I'm going to be flinging around the theater when I see this in April. Number 2, Saw X. Saw 10. Saw X? Saw 10. Well, we'll decide. I don't know what they want to call it. The games never end. So long as the sun still sets, they will continue making Saw movies. Death, taxes, they're gonna keep making Saw movies. Those are certainties of the world. There's always more inventive ways to show horrific dismemberments and really stretch the definition of what a game is. The franchise has been spinning its wheels for a little bit, with most fans agreeing that there hasn't been a truly great Saw movie in years. Saw 7, The Final Chapter, Jigsaw, and Spiral were all pretty weak entries that disappointed longtime fans. Saw The Final Chapter, ain't that ironic? We were all hoping to see a little bit more of John Kramer, less convoluted plot twists and retcons, and more of what Saw's all about, chaining people to radiators who probably didn't deserve that much torment. While Spiral seemed like a step in the right direction, it did underperform dramatically and wasn't exactly the reboot worthy of saving the series. So longtime Saw collaborators Kevin Grutart and Josh Stolberg came together to pen and direct a script for Saw X. Saw 10. At this time, very little is known about the 10th entry in the splattering series, other than that Tobin Bell, best known for his role as John Kramer and that funny little puppet, will be returning with a main character role. So we can expect lots of Kramer goodness, lots of pre-recorded messages about how much blood victims are going to have to shed to learn important life lessons. Exciting too is Shawnee Smith, who plays Amanda Young, Jigsaw's troubled apprentice from the first 3 Saw movies, is set to return as well. And reports say that it's going to take place at some point during the first and second film, which makes sense since, spoiler alert from a movie from 2004, Jigsaw dies in the 3rd one, so, wasn't a lot to do there. He's capable of a lot of things, but bringing himself back from the dead he hasn't quite nailed yet. Do I think Saw 10 is going to be the best movie ever? Probably not, who's to say, but I absolutely love the Saw series, bones and all, pun intended, for all its ridiculous soap opera level twists, secret apprentices, and just utterly insane death trap, and of course, that little puppet. So I'm excited to spend any time at all in that dirty bathroom one more time. Number 1, Five Nights at Freddy's. Yeah, no, I'm being serious. I'm including this on the list because you know what? I'm genuinely looking forward to it. If you're unfamiliar with the IP somehow, Five Nights at Freddy's is a series of video games about a haunted pizzeria populated by an animatronic cartoon band who's a lot more lively than their stilted animations will suggest. They come to life at night and have a real hunger for just about anything that isn't animatronic. Now the series gets unbelievably complicated, so I'll let someone else more knowledgeable than me explain that. If you're a Five Nights at Freddy's fan, head on over to Top 10 Gaming. They do so much Five Nights stuff, you'll have stuff to watch for years. The mega popular smash hit indie game franchise blew up pretty much overnight. Going from one developer's passion project, a short half-hour scary point-and-click game, became a media empire, spanning 9 games, not including spin-offs, a series of novels and comic books, and a movie that's been in production hell since 2015. The Five Nights movie has passed from multiple creators and teams, and for ages, it seemed like it was never gonna actually materialize and just existed as a sort of vague tease. But as of 2023 though, we have found a team, we've found a script, and we've got some concrete evidence it exists. It's being actively filmed, and it's starring Josh Hutcherson as the doomed security guard, and horror icon Matthew Lillard, famous for playing Shaggy in Scooby-Doo, and the original Ghostface, spoilers, will be playing the villainous owner of the Fazbear franchise. Early reports too said the animatronics in the film will be all practical effects, which if done right will be premium unleaded nightmare fuel. I am a sucker for a practical effect in a horror movie. All bets are on for the Five Nights movie to be a pretty big hit. Jason Blum, the head of Blumhouse, is producing, and Matt Lillard has already agreed to do a trilogy of Five Nights at Freddy's movies. So watch this space when we do top 5 horror movies for 2024, and I mentioned Five Nights at Freddy's 2 in the #1 spot.
Number 5. Phoenix Forgotten. Phoenix Forgotten is a 2017 American found footage sci-fi horror directed by Justin Barber in his directorial debut and written by him and T.S. Nolan. Produced by Ridley Scott, the Ridley Scott. The film tells the story of the disappearance of 3 teenagers who set out to find the source of a widely reported 1997 UFO phenomenon known famously as, you guessed it, the Phoenix Lights. We all remember this, don't we? Okay, now the plot. Sophie Bishop and her boyfriend visit Sophie's parents' place in Phoenix, Arizona on the 20th anniversary of her brother's disappearance. In 1997, the family all witnessed the Phoenix Lights during Sophie's 6th birthday, which was, drumroll please, recorded. Several strange lights appear in a formation over the city before being chased by fighter jets. The family is convinced that they have witnessed UFOs via the old recordings, and Sophie now begins to dig a little bit deeper. In the tapes, Sophie's brother Josh begins investigating the Phoenix Lights with the help of his friends Ashley and Mark. Sophie interviews multiple parties regarding the trio's disappearance and the sightings in '97, only to find the group's abandoned car and a camera and one single tape. Sophie views the tape, obviously, showing the beginning of the group's epic journey to find out what caused the Phoenix Lights. We then see what eventually ensues of the poor trio in a horror movie about aliens. Yeah, shocker, right? Or who knows, maybe it has a happy ending. I like this movie a lot for obvious reasons, but it's like really fun, and I like the dated feel with the tapes, you know? As always, dudes, if you like what we do here at Top 5 Scary, throw us a thumbs up down below or even leave us a comment, you know? Number 4, Antrum. Antrum is supposed to be the deadliest movie ever made, and that's what it claims. It's like a fever dream, this movie. Again, not real, but supposedly real. You know? It's a movie. Antrum is proudly a 2018 Canadian horror film. Woo! Go Canada. Written and directed by David Amito and Michael Lacini, the film is divided into 2 parts, an opening and a closing narrative in the form of a mockumentary and a feature film. The mockumentary loosely tells the story of Antrum, a movie released in the late 70s that supposedly had effects on those who watched it. The bulk of the movie then is just kinda moment to moment what kinda happened. Antrum was developed by Amito and Lacini during the development of a separate project in which they were brainstorming scenarios that scared them. Their central idea would later become the basis of Antrum. This idea and concept of what it would be like to watch a supposed, quote, real cursed film. The filmmakers felt like it would make a great horror film, which it does. For the film's occult aspects, the writers studied multiple historical depictions of demons and the devil. It stars Nicole Tompkins and child actor Rowan Smith. Antrum made its world premiere at the Brooklyn Horror Film Festival in October 2018 and was nominated for several awards festival to festival. Uncorked Entertainment acquired North American distribution rights, releasing it on video on demand and pretty well all streaming services since like 2019. It received great reviews who praised its uncomfortable atmosphere, its uncomfortable acting, and creativity. Yeah, they kind of nailed it with this one. It's so 70s. Like, it feels like, again, a fevered night terror. Number 3. As Above, So Below. As Above, So Below is a 2014 American horror film written and directed by John Eric Dowdle and co-written by his brother Drew. The title refers to the popular paraphrase of the second verse of the Emerald Tablet. The film is presented to the audience as found footage, following a documentary's crew's experience exploring the catacombs of Paris. The film was produced by Legendary Pictures and distributed by Universal. The film received negative reviews from critics but grossed more than $40 million with a huge profit from only a $5 million budget. The plot. Scarlett Marlowe is a scholar continuing her past father's research for the Philosopher's Stone. Scarlett travels to Paris with 2 friends, and using codes from her research, they solve a riddle leading them with coordinates to the catacombs of Paris. They sneak underground and the group wanders the caves. They encounter cultists, ghosts, visions, you name it. They find a Templar, Assassin's Creed looking tomb and see and read some pretty jarring stuff. Statues in the walls come to life, and it goes all Indiana Jones but like scary. The car scene? Like, yeah, what's that about? That's horrifying and downright disturbing. Dude, this movie is gonna leave you gasping for air, literally. But I really liked this movie. It's shot GoPro style, and I love that humid, dingy cave stuff. Look one way in the dark and then the other way. Yeah, I'm just sweating thinking about that scene. Number 2. The Taking of Deborah Logan. It's one of the scariest movies I've ever seen, I'm not gonna lie. This movie is horrifying. If you're down for like old witchy ghost lady vibes on a Friday night, and you like jump scares, we got a winner, folks. A 2014 gem. This American found footage supernatural horror film is a first for the director Adam Robidoux, who co-wrote the screenplay. Set in Virginia, it tells the story of a documentary crew making a film about Alzheimer's patients who uncover something sinister while documenting one woman. The film was released right around Halloween time, and you can still catch this on like every streaming service. A team of students who want to create a documentary about Deborah Logan, an elderly woman who has Alzheimer's, films and records her daily life. Then Deb starts to act a little bizarre. They notice that her actions defy normal explanations and express something a little bit more supernatural. Things escalate after they record an audio of Deborah talking about sacrifices and snakes. Oh yeah, like real witchy old lady vibes, I'm telling you. After some talk about an ancient ritual that makes people immortal, some dark cultist kind of stuff, and voila, Deb goes on a spree and tries to kidnap them all. They find out that she has quite the sinister history and that maybe she's not a really good fit for the star of a documentary, more like the star of an exorcism. Yeah, like that kind of stuff, you know? GoPro, night visions, old lady witchy standing in dark corners, good old-fashioned thrillers, you know? Good for the whole family, right before bedtime, in the dark. And the number 1 spot, of course, is The Visit. This movie's kind of like the last movie, with all the witchy vibes, but like way more subtle and way more terrifying. Yeah, I don't like when there's like creepy shit just running around in the background shots, right? Like, that's what scares me the most, the background shots. The Visit is a 2015 American found footage comedy horror film written, produced, and directed by M. Night Shyamalan. The film centers around 2 young siblings, teenager Becca and her kid brother Tyler, who live with their mother, who's had a pretty gruesome past herself. After finding their grandchildren online and wanting to meet them, the kids' grandparents invite them to spend a week at their farmhouse. Aw, how nice. Like a little Hansel and Gretel type stuff. Exactly. The film was released by Universal Pictures and it grossed about $100 million worldwide, against only a $5 million production budget, so yeah, this one killed it. Good job, guys. But it got mixed reviews though. I don't really know why. This movie's like really scary and well done. The plot. The kiddies are getting ready for a 5-day overnighter at the grandparents while their mother Loretta goes on a cruise as a much needed break. Loretta reveals that she has not spoken to her parents for like 15 years. The teens plan to record a documentary film about their visit using a camcorder. It's shot kind of GoPro style with some classic camera falls on the floor, what's in the background type fun. I'm not gonna spoil anything in this movie, but if you like screaming things, crawling around all in the middle of the night, yeah, then this movie's definitely worth a watch. Check it out.
Number 5, The Conjuring. Now, if you're a fan of this channel, no doubt you know all about Ed and Lorraine Warren, the famed demonologists with a storied career in investigating the paranormal and unknown. You probably knew as well that The Conjuring was based on real events, but how much do you know about the real story that inspired the mega hit? Well, just like the film, in 1971, the Perron family moved into a 14-room farmhouse in Rhode Island with their 5 daughters. Almost as soon as they could start unpacking their things, however, they began to notice bizarre happenings around the home. It all started pretty small, just weird little things. objects moving, a broom being found in a room different from where it was left. The girls would say that they'd see spirits floating around the halls, but you know how kids are. The mother, Carolyn, researched the house's history to see if there was anything that suggested it was a ground for spiritual activity. She discovered that the house had been home to one family for 8 generations. Not that scary. She also discovered that many members of this family all passed away under mysterious circumstances. Pretty scary. Now, just like the film, they learned at one point the house was owned by a woman named Bethesda, who was thought to be a Satanist and a witch. One of the parents' daughters thought that Bethesda's spirit threatened her mother's presence. And just like in the films, the Warrens found their way to the parents and performed a seance to try and speak to Bethesda, and claimed they saw Carolyn Perrin speaking in tongues during the seance. Now, where the movie differs slightly is that in the film, Ed Warren performs an exorcism and heroically saves the family and cleanses the house. But in the real story, the Warrens were sent away because the parents were worried about Carolyn's mental health. They also did not perform an exorcism, as Lorraine Warren said it wouldn't have been appropriate for them as they weren't members of the ministry. The parents stayed in the house until 1980, when eventually the hauntings started to go silent. This might be one of the few times a horror movie based on a true story had a happier ending than the real story. Love horror movies? Me too. Stick around at Top 5 Scary for more stuff every day. Let's creep on creeping on. Number 4. The Amityville Horror. Another haunted house story, and wouldn't you know it, another one attached to Ed and Lorraine Warren. If there was a haunted house in the Midwestern United States in the 1970s and they made a movie about it, well, by gum, those two names will come up a lot. They were very busy. The Amityville Horror has been made into a movie a few times, first in 1979 and again in 2005, if you can remember that terrible period when Hollywood was dredging up every single horror franchise and rebooting them terribly. Both movies are based on a real-life famous haunting, however, and while details vary between the films pretty wildly, let's see how they stack up against the original case. In 1973, a man named Ronald DeFeo slayed his family in a brutal crime, claiming that he had heard voices that had commanded him to do it, and there was some entity in the house. 13 months later, the Lutz family bought the house. The realtors had warned them about the house's grisly past, but it didn't bother them. You know how the housing market is. A friend of the family told them that it would be wise to have the house blessed, since there could still be evil inside the walls. After the family moved in, they described all sorts of paranormal wrongdoings going on. Green viscous slime coming up the staircases, voices speaking out to them, telling them to get out, flies all over the house, and the family even seeing wild things like specters. Now that's all pretty bad, but the film adaptations really take it up to the extreme. In the films, the Lutz family faces spirits directly, seeing ghosts, the father even gets possessed and attacks the family dog. Now, nothing this extreme happened in the actual haunting case, but there was a photo that was released that appears to show a ghostly boy walking across a staircase. But there's a lot of discussion as to whether or not it's legitimate, or whether or not anything involving the haunting was legitimate at all, as there are many who feel that it was faked by the Warrens and hyped up a little bit to try and make it a much more interesting story so they could sell books or movies. Well, real or not, it definitely worked, as the book was a smash hit and there have been dozens of movies since, meaning we're not leaving Amityville anytime soon. Number 3. The Exorcism. Now, The Exorcism is an iconic horror movie and legendary story adapted from a novel. Not many people know that the novel and the film were based on a real-life exorcism of a boy named Roland Doe, or so we think, as his real name has never been cleared up. Living in Maryland, Roland lived a quiet, sheltered life, relying on his aunt for company, a noted occultist, and fascinated with the spirit world. She gifted him a Ouija board at a young age. After his aunt passed, it wasn't long before the family home started to experience a series of strange paranormal events. Like it always does, it started a bit small, just objects moving around the house or water leaking from all the pipes in the house, but then eventually it started to ramp up. It seemed like Roland had become possessed. He started to fall mysteriously ill, and red scratches appeared all over the boy's body. The family was put in contact with the clergy, who suggested they needed an exorcist to help them. Now, unfortunately, although in the film, Reagan only needed one exorcism, albeit a brutally rough one, Roland wouldn't be nearly that lucky. Roland was exorcised round the clock for weeks and weeks. Now, he never turned green and vomited up pea soup, nor did he ever twist his head all the way around, but they did report that he would growl gutturally in a voice that wasn't his. He would speak Latin, and even threatened the priests by saying that Satan had taken control of his soul. On one occasion, during an extreme exorcism, he broke free of his restraints when he was tied to a mattress and managed to slash at one of the priests using the buckle, similar to Reagan attacking her exorcisers multiple times in the film. After weeks of battling, eventually like a miracle, Roland woke and said he saw a vision of Saint Michael and Satan battling for his soul. and after that, he was freed. None of the priests were slain like in the film, and luckily after this harrowing experience, Roland was able to live a quiet, normal life and tried his best to live under the radar, not wanting any more attention than he'd already had. After reading about it in a newspaper, author William Blatty was fascinated by the case and inspired to write about an exorcism of his own, which would then become The Exorcism, and then the movie was made, and well, the rest is pretty much history. Number 2. Annabelle. Another famous story from the Warrens' legacy. We knew we'd be seeing them again. Based around probably the most famous and recognizable haunted item in the Warrens' Museum of the Occult, Annabelle. The real Annabelle is a cursed Raggedy Ann doll that was one of the first cases the Warrens ever investigated. Now the real Annabelle already looks pretty unsettling and isn't the kind of thing I would ever give to a child, but her Hollywood glow-up made her even more terrifying. The story of the film and the legend of the real Annabelle differ pretty greatly though. In the film, Annabelle is given off as a gift from a husband to his pregnant wife, whereas in reality, the Raggedy Ann doll was given to a nursing student, Donna, by her mother as a small gift. The film does feature Donna and her roommate Angie speaking to the Warrens at the beginning, describing their experiences with the doll. That's kind of where the two stories stop being the same and start differing greatly. The original story, Donna claims that the doll would move around their home, appearing in random places, occasionally having red stains on her no one could explain. She would complain that her and her roommate would wake up covered in scratches, again, no one could explain. They said they would find notes scrawled in red writing across the home, reading cryptic things like "Help us" or "Help Lou," the name of Donna's roommate's fiance. The most extreme thing any of them ever reported was that Donna's fiance claims one night while staying over, he felt something crawling on his leg, and when he looked to see what it was, he saw Annabelle on his leg and claims the doll leapt up at him. He woke up the next morning completely unsure if what he had experienced was real or not. Now from there, they contacted a medium to arrange a seance to see if they were dealing with something truly evil. From here, the Warrens were put in contact to help them and take Annabelle off their friends. While the real story is no doubt spine-chilling, the movie got a lot more dramatic, involving satanic cults, deaths, house fires, and a whole lot more. But still, I probably wouldn't want to spend any time near the real Annabelle, just in case. Number 1. A Nightmare on Elm Street. Wes Craven was a master of horror. I don't think it is completely fair to call him a visionary and an icon of the craft, giving us not just one, but two legendary classic horror movie franchises, A Nightmare on Elm Street and the satirical horror movie series Scream. Freddy Krueger is larger than life as a horror icon. He's incredibly popular, appearing in several of his own movies, even coming into some of Jason's movies, starring in a couple video games as a playable character in Mortal Kombat and Dead by Daylight. A horribly burned dream-invading ghoul, manifesting people's worst fear and attacking them in a place no one can help them and no one can believe them. He's terrifying, but by gosh do we love him. It's no wonder Freddy's had such scary staying power. But I bet you didn't know Wes Craven was inspired by a real-life horror story for Freddy. Don't worry, there's no real-life groundskeepers that were cast into a furnace, at least I think. Wes Craven was reading the LA Times one morning and he read an article that pierced him and stuck with him. It was about a refugee family that fled to the United States for the fear of their lives. The son of the family was plagued by nightmares and said that he was too afraid to sleep. When he finally found himself falling asleep in the middle of the night, he was screaming and passed away during a nightmare. This spoke to Wes Craven deeply, who sympathized that he was too afraid to sleep and no one would listen to his worries, and saddened at the idea of something that would attack someone while they were vulnerable and away from the protection of supervisors and guardians. From that tragic story, Freddy Krueger was born as a manifestation of this horrible concept that affected Wes Craven so deeply, trying to conjure up the most evil thing he could think of. Since then, Freddy's become a pop culture icon and is not without his legions of fans, but few know the true story behind the iconic slasher.
Number 5, Halloween Ends. But will it though? Because there's like 46 full-length movies in this universe, isn't there? Hey, and we love them all. Who am I kidding? Halloween Ends is an upcoming American slasher film directed and written by David Gordon Green, Danny McBride, Paul Brad Logan, and Chris Bernier. The current R-rated Halloween trilogy serves as a direct sequel to the 1978 original slasher, with a number of OG actors reprising their roles. It's the 13th installment in the Halloween franchise. Ooh, number 13, huh? The film is set to star the Queen of Screams herself, the legendary Jamie Lee Curtis, Will Patton, Kyle Richards, to name a few. Definitely some peeps reprising the roles from other Halloweens. I see that. I can't wait for this. Most of us have known this franchise, universe, multiverse, whatever you want to call it, our whole lives. Fast walks and jump scares. It's coming to a theater near you very soon, actually. In June 2018, before the release of Halloween 2018, McBride confirmed that he and Green had intended to pitch 2 films that would be shot back to back, but decided against it, waiting to see how the first film was perceived. In 2019, the film's title was announced along with Halloween Kills. The film will be produced by Jason Blum with Blumhouse Productions alongside Rough House, Miramax, and Trancas. Halloween Ends is scheduled to be released October 14th, 2022 by Universal Pictures. It will also stream simultaneously on Peacock for 60 days. I love these movies, man. The acting alone, like how they act so scared. It's so believable. Just screaming all day, take after take. That's a lot of tea with honey and lemon, isn't it? Less is more always, and I'll definitely be having a night filled with chips, dips, and lots of hands in my face blocking the screen, you know? I'll do my best. That's how I watch scary movies. Just like, I can't see it at all. I'm a huge chicken. I'm not gonna lie. Number 4, Hellraiser. The Hellraiser franchise is back with this sci-fi supernatural horror we all love, which includes 4 films, 6 straight-to-home video films, various comic books and media, all based around the novella by English author Clive Barker titled The Hellbound Heart. The franchise centers around the Cenobites, including the primary antagonist we all love and fear, the infamous Pinhead. Next month, Hellraiser's back. The film is directed by David Bruckner, with screenplay by Ben Collins and Luke Petrowski from a story that they wrote with David Goyer. This project is intended to serve as a reimagining of Clive Barker's 1987 film and the 11th installment of the Hellraiser franchise. The film will follow closely to the source material novella written by Barker, The Hellbound Heart, and the film is going to star Odessa Azion and Jamie Clayton, and is a co-production from the 20th Century Studios, Spyglass Media, and Phantom 4 Films. Plans for a Hellraiser remake was in talks in 2007. However, following the release of Hellraiser Revelations, to secure the rights, they had to hold off a bit. By 2018, after the critical and commercial success of Halloween, Miramax Films confirmed plans of a new Hellraiser project, including a prequel and reboot. The film was greenlit in 2019, with Bruckner directing a script written by Collins and Petrowski, and shooting began September 2021. Hellraiser is scheduled to be released exclusively on Hulu as a Hulu original film this October 7th, 2022. I'm not gonna lie, this looks awesome. I wonder how they had to sit through all the hair and makeup though, you know? Just trying to drink a coffee, but you can't reach your own face. I made a wicked Hellraiser mask for Halloween one year, you know? Just a Jabberwocky's mask, smashed a bunch of nails right through it. Did the trick. Number 3, Dark Harvest. This looks pretty dark and twisted. Dark Harvest is an American upcoming fantasy horror film directed by David Slade and written by Michael Gillio based on the 2006 novel of the same name by Norman Partridge. Scheduled to be released in theaters September 9th, 2022. In early 2019, it was reported New Regency hired David Slade to direct the adaptation of Dark Harvest, with Michael Gillio writing the script and Mac Tolmack and David Mamperl producing. We know some of Slade's movies already, such as Hard Candy, Twilight Eclipse, and Bandersnatch. Great films, you know? Great shots. The plot, here we go. Every fall in a small Midwestern town, a supernatural specter named Sawtooth Jack arises from the cornfields and approaches the town's church, where violent gangs of young boys hungrily await their chance to confront the legendary nightmare in an annual harvest rite of life and death. Richie Shepard lives in the shadow of his big brother, who won last year's October prize to get his ticket out of town. To prove to himself and his brother, Richie pairs up with the relentless dreamer Kelly Haynes, who will do whatever it takes to escape this dead-end town. Against the rules and against the odds, Richie and Kelly decide to hunt down the legendary nightmare themselves together. Okay, this sounds different. The nickname really shook me though, you know? Sawtooth Jack. Like, first and last names are scary enough sometimes. You don't need a visceral nickname from a cornfield, you know? Very terrifying. I guess we're gonna see this Jack Skellington meets Children of the Corn nightmare in the next couple of weeks, actually. Looks pretty awesome. The concept art alone. Very terrifying. Number 2, Jeepers Creepers Reborn. One of my favorite horror universes. These movies have kept me awake many, many hours. And, well, here we go again. Jeepers Creepers Reborn is an upcoming American horror film directed by Timo Vuorensola in his Hollywood debut. Written by Sean Michael Argo, it is the 4th film and a reboot in the Jeepers Creepers film series, meant to serve as the first in a planned trilogy set apart from Victor Salva's original trilogy. Okay, so same concept, different vision. I got it. We have a Snyder Cut. I get it. The film is scheduled to be released in the US September 19th, 2022 by Screen Media Films. Now, for the plot. The Horror Hound Festival is being held for the first time in Louisiana. Among the attendees are Chase and his girlfriend Lane, who begins to experience unexplained premonitions and disturbing visions associated with the town's past and the infamous Creeper. Principal photography started shooting in Jackson, Louisiana. Soon after, however, the production was moved to the UK due to the pandemic. Filming in the UK was split into two parts, the first in November 2020 at Black Hanger Studios and finished on December. The second filming chunk took place between January and February 2021. The title was officially confirmed as Jeepers Creepers Reborn in February 2021 when Screen Media Films acquired the rights in the US and Canada. At the 2021 European film market, Foresight Unlimited showed a promotional reel of footage for the international sales, and apparently it was pretty scary. Yeah, I can't wait for this one. I love these movies. They're campy, they're cheesy, they're absolutely terrifying. True story, my sister and I were watching the first one as kids and a giant moth flew in front of the porch light. Yeah, just like a 40-foot winged shadow on the wall. All of a sudden, mid-movie. Yeah, that'll keep you up. And number one, we have Smile. Okay, this one looks the scariest by far, and I'm not sure if it's in the budget or it's just the neighborhood that I live in, but everyone smiles like this, you know? I'm looking forward to watching this, but I don't want to see it, you know? Smile is an upcoming American psychological horror film written and directed by Parker Finn in his feature film debut. It's based on his 2020 short film, Laura Hasn't Slept. Gonna rename that to Kyle Hasn't Slept after watching this one, 100%. Yeah. The film stars Sosie Bacon, Jesse T. Usher, Kyle Gallner, Caitlin Stacey, Cal Penn, and Rob Morgan. Smile will have its world premiere at Fantastic Fest on September 22nd, 2022, and is scheduled to be released in the US September 30th, 2022 by Paramount Pictures. Alright, so we'll get a better idea in the next couple of weekends. Also, which movie do you think of when you see the Paramount logo? You know what I mean? Mine's Grease. Every time I see it, I just feel like Grease Lightning's coming up. I don't know. Okay, now the plot. After witnessing a bizarre traumatic incident involving a patient, Dr. Rose Cotter starts experiencing frightening occurrences that she can't explain. Rose must confront her troubling past in order to survive and escape her horrifying new reality. The short film won the Special Jury Recognition Prize for South by Southwest's Midnight Short category. In September 2021, the film was announced under a different title, however, of Something's Wrong. Shooting began October 11th in New Jersey and finished in November. Okay, so a nice little quick turnaround, you know? They had like a one-take kind of day. Yo, imagine walking around and everyone's just smiling like Mr. Burns at you all day. That's horrifying. I think I would just bird box myself and just blindfold up, you know? Just start swinging. Yeah, this looks great. I can't wait. I watched the trailer and then I started seeing people smiling at me on the way home. You know what I mean? Terrifying. What do you think?
Number 5 on this list is The Crow, a 1994 gothic horror superhero movie that's earned quite the cult following since its release. Similarly to some of our other entries on this list, it had one of the most tragic filming processes ever. Slash Film writes, The Crow had a slow and rocky production. According to Cursed Films, during pre-production, a mysterious figure called the offices and left a voicemail asking production to stop. This was followed by multiple tragedies. An electrician was badly burned, others were injured, then Lee died as the film was finishing filming, shot by accident when a prop gun malfunctioned. Since the film was late in production, the person responsible for handling weapon safety wasn't around to supervise the scene and wasn't able to ensure that all props were safe to use. Lee's scenes were completed by using a mixture of body doubles and then revolutionary CGI, but the film kept that charged and sad legacy, which has become impossible to separate from the story itself. Who was that mysterious figure and how did they know something bad was gonna happen? People have speculated that the phone call that was made was from a spirit from the other side. They believe that by going against the spirit and not doing what it said resulted in the tragedies that occurred. This could also be the curse that affects you if you watch this movie. A few people have reported getting a strange call a few days after seeing this film from an undisclosed number. The phone call will start super weirdly and will eventually tell them to stop doing something in their life. Just like what happened with the movie, if they continue to do whatever they were told not to, bad things will occur. Number 4 on this list is The Innkeepers. The Innkeepers is a really interesting one. You see, this movie is cursed based on where it was shot. Slash Film says, interestingly, West, who was the director of the movie, decided to make the film after hearing that the hotel where his crew stayed while shooting his previous film, The House of the Devil, was haunted. Well, the hotel that inspired the film is actually in the film, said West in an interview with IndieWire. The staff at the hotel believe it's haunted. The whole town believes it's haunted, so it has this kind of mystique quality to it. While West said that he's a skeptic and doesn't believe in ghosts, he and the cast lived in the hotel for the duration of the shooting, and he did see some doors opening and closing and TVs turning on and off, and mentioned that everyone who was sleeping there had very vivid dreams. Sarah Paxton, the star of the film, said that at nights her door would also violently fly open. It might just be because this is a scary movie and people get scared, but some people have reported similar occurrences happening in their home after they watch this movie, as if the haunting that happened at that hotel where they shot it somehow comes into the space where the movie is played. I'm not sure how much of this one I believe, but they did film it at an actual haunted location, so you never know. Number 3 on this list is Rosemary's Baby. One of the scariest movies of all time, might be one of the most cursed of all time, and this curse might even affect you when you watch it. Slash Films writes, at a party, the film's composer, Christoph Komeda, fell off a rocky slope and into a coma that he never recovered from, similar to the actions that the witches take in the novel to get rid of Rosemary's friend. Then there's also the story of Sharon Tate, Roman Polanski's wife. Reportedly, Tate auditioned repeatedly for the role of Rosemary, which ended up going to Pharaoh. She makes a background appearance in one of the film's scenes. While the film was still in theaters, Tate was killed in her home by followers of Charles Manson. At the time, she was pregnant. All of these events stoked the fear and the interest of the public, giving the film a bump in popularity and an infamous reputation. Levin himself said that he had mixed feelings about the film, claiming that while it gave him access to exclusive literary circles, it also helped popularize the occult and Satanism, which was prevalent during that time period. There was obviously something going on with the creation of this movie, and people believe that it can also be passed over to the viewer. Clearly, tragedy was involved when this movie was being made, and some sort of spirit or some sort of demonic omen was afoot. That tragic luck will, in rare cases, come in the form of a curse to somebody who watches this movie. This could all be fake Reddit stuff, but there was a story of how somebody watched this movie and then 9 days after doing so, while on a hike with their family, fell off of a rocky slope and got put into a coma, just like what happened to Komeda. Maybe this was a coincidence, maybe this wasn't even true, I'm not really sure. All we can say for sure is that something haunted the actual production of this movie, and I don't think it's that much of a stretch to think that that haunting could continue to those who watch this as well. Number 2 on this list is The Omen. It almost just feels fitting that a movie called The Omen just happens to get you cursed if you watch it. Slash Film says, production on The Omen was controversial from the get-go. Executive Bob Munger, who pitched the original story, warned the producer about the dangers of making a film like this. If the devil's greatest single weapon is to be invisible, and you're gonna do something which is gonna take away his invisibility to millions of people, he's not gonna want that to happen, he said. During production, tragedy struck. Lead actor Gregory Peck's son died by taking his own life, and Greg's plane was struck by lightning when he was flying to London for the role. Mark Newfield, one of the film's executives, also said that his plane was struck by lightning when flying to LA. Stories like this continued to plague the production, resulting in the death of an animal trainer on set and a special effects artist involvement in a fatal car crash that recalled the fatality he created for the film. Per local reports, a sign on the site of the accident read, Omen, 66.6 kilometers. Yeah, so this movie is all bad when it comes to curses, and apparently they pass over to the viewer as well. Now, I don't think that you're gonna get struck by lightning or anything like that, but some people have said that watching this movie has turned into a bad omen for their life. That after they watched it, things that should go their way just started doing the opposite. They got fired from their job for things outside of their control. Their spouse left them for no good reason. They got diagnosed with something that's really not very good. All just bad things that are pretty much out of their control. Maybe this movie is actually cursed, and watching it means that you will be too. And finally, number 1 on this list is Poltergeist. This movie has got to be cursed based on how many deaths are associated with its production. The movie was released in 1982, and it's not only one of the most famous horror movies of all time, but it also holds one of the most famous curses. Several documentaries have looked into how serious this curse was was when they were making this movie, and also how it can be transferable to those who watch this movie. 4 separate cast members died while they were working on this film or immediately after it was finished shooting. That is a lot of cast members, guys, and far too many to just be a coincidence. These were big cast members too, literally the face of the franchise, Heather O'Rourke being one of them. Along with these deaths, there were also some really scary things going on here, like a member of the crew becoming possessed and having to have an exorcism performed on him while on set. Also, the iconic pool scene with the skeletons, well, apparently they used actual human skeletons when they were filming it. This whole production was just messed up from the beginning, and since the movie was released, people believe that some people could suffer from watching it. There have been some stories of people becoming susceptible to demonic possession after watching this movie, similarly to what happened to that one crew member. Be wary of Poltergeist if you do choose to watch it, folks. Number 5 on this list is Texas Chainsaw Massacre. If slasher movies are more your style of horror, then this movie should definitely be up your alley. Texas Chainsaw Massacre is an upcoming Netflix film directed by David Blue Garcia. It stars Sarah Yarkin, Elsie Fisher, and Mark Burnham. This is going to be the 9th installment of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise. However, this movie doesn't act as the 9th in the franchise, as it's supposed to be a direct sequel from the first ever Texas Chainsaw Massacre that was released in 1974. Now, if you've never seen that first movie and you do intend to watch it, then just be aware that the log line for this next upcoming film, there's actually a spoiler in regards to that original movie. I'm going to read that off now. The log line of this movie is Melody, her teenage sister Lila, and their friends Dante and Ruth head to the remote town of Harlow, Texas to start an idealistic new business venture. But their dream soon turns into a waking nightmare when they accidentally disrupt the home of Leatherface, the deranged serial killer whose blood-soaked legacy continues to haunt the area's residents, including Sally Hardesty, the sole survivor of his infamous 1973 massacre, who's hellbent on seeking revenge. So that paints a pretty good picture of what you can expect from this movie. Texas Chainsaw Massacre has been an extremely successful franchise, and that first movie made incredible advances to the slasher genre as a whole. That being said, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise has never been known for their extensive story or plot lines. I obviously have yet to be able to see this movie and don't want to give it an unfair evaluation. However, I would imagine that this movie will be pretty similar to its predecessors in the past. If blood, gore, and brutal death is for you, then you'll probably love it. The film is set to be released on Netflix on February 18th of 2022. Number 4 on this list is Firestarter. Firestarter, according to Google, is an upcoming American science fiction horror film directed by Keith Thomas, based on the novel of the same name by Stephen King. It's a reboot of the 1984 film adaptation. Anything that is based on a Stephen King book has my attention, and especially one as cool as Firestarter. The film is directed by Keith Thomas and stars Zac Efron. The initial Firestarter movie that was made in 1984 didn't do as well as the movie makers might have hoped, and I imagine that the makers of this film intend to raise the bar this time around. The premise is as follows. A young man must protect his daughter after she develops pyrokinesis and is hunted by a secret government agency known as the Shop that intends to capture and control her. Now, I've never read Firestarter or seen the initial movie, but the premise sounds incredibly cool to me. Just from reading that, I can see a lot of potential comparisons to the show Stranger Things, which I absolutely loved. I will admit that this movie doesn't sound quite as scary as some of the other ones on this list, but I imagine that it's going to be a pretty good thriller, and if it's done properly, should keep us on the edge of our seats the entire time. The science fiction horror movie has yet to get an official release date, but most people are speculating that it'll be late 2022. Number 3 on this list is Scream. The movie Scream is informally being referred to as Scream 5, and that should let you know that it's going to be the 5th installment of the Scream franchise. Similar to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, this movie should appeal to our slasher lovers out there. The movie is going to be directed by Matt Bettinelli-Olpin and also Tyler Gillett. This is going to be really interesting for the franchise as a whole because it's going to be the only Scream movie not directed by Wes Craven, who sadly passed away in 2015. David Arquette, Neve Campbell, Courtney Cox, and Roger L. Jackson are all coming back to play their original roles from the past films. The premise of this movie is 25 years after a streak of brutal murders shocked the quiet town of Woodsboro, a new killer dons the ghost face mask and begins targeting a new group of teenagers to resurrect secrets from the town's deadly past. It's been over a decade since the last Scream movie came out, with the last one being in 2011, so fans of the franchise are pretty excited to be getting another installment in the series. Apparently this movie is to be a direct sequel to the events that occurred in Scream 4. In all honesty, I've only ever seen the first Scream and can't give my personal opinion on the last several installments of this franchise. However, I did give the trailer for this upcoming Scream a watch, and it definitely looks like a winner. The production quality looks great, and it seems like there's a pretty solid story there as well. This one is coming out very soon, with the initial release supposed to happen on January 14th of 2022. Number 2 on this list is Nope. Nope is an upcoming film from horror legend Jordan Peele. Peele is said to have written, directed, and produced the movie under his Monkey Paw Productions company. The film is said to star Daniel Kaluuya, Ethan Kutkoski, and Steven Yeun. Now, in all honesty, not much is known about this movie in regards to the plot. The only thing that we've really seen about this movie is the poster of it. The poster features what looks to be a small town or potentially a circus at the foot of some mountains with some extremely menacing clouds overhead. This is basically all we've gotten from Peele about this project so far, but it hasn't stopped fans from trying to speculate. Now, some people are guessing that the title Nope gives a lot away about the style of this horror movie. People on the internet use the word nope to describe movies or scenes from movies. For instance, a nope scene might be one where something super cringy or awkward is happening that makes the audience want to turn away or effectively say nope to the scene. Some people are speculating that the entire Peele movie will have scenes like this and attack the audience with jarring stuff that makes the viewer uneasy. Others are thinking that the movie could be about a cloud, considering the clouds in the poster are certainly pretty frightening and really foreboding. Some other people are even guessing that the movie could be a sequel to Peele's most famous horror project, Get Out. The reason that they say this is because this is the first reunion Daniel Kaluuya and Jordan Peele have had since that movie. Jordan Peele's horror career has been one of great success so far, and if Nope is anything like the other works he's written and directed, then this could very easily turn into be one of the scariest and best horror movies of 2022. As of right now, the film is set to release in July, so definitely keep it on your radar. Number 1 on this list is The Black Phone. The Black Phone sounds utterly terrifying if you ask me. The movie is a supernatural horror film that's directed by Scott Derrickson, who is also the director of The Exorcism of Emily Rose. It stars Ethan Hawke, who I absolutely love as an actor, and is based off of the 2004 short story of the same name written by Joe Hill. And in case you weren't familiar, Joe Hill is the son of famous horror author Stephen King, and he really channeled his father's energy with his short story of The Black Phone. The plotline of this movie on Rotten Tomatoes is as follows. Finney Shaw, a shy but clever 13-year-old boy, is abducted by a sadistic killer and trapped in a soundproof basement where screaming is of little use. When a disconnected phone on the wall begins to ring, Finney discovers he can hear the voices of the killer's previous victims, and they are dead set on making sure that what happened to them doesn't happen to Finney. I watched the trailer of this movie and it looked just as scary as the plotline suggests. I don't know a lot about Ethan Hawke's character other than he's a sick murderer, but we do know he wears this unsettling mask at all times, so you can never really see his face. This horror movie has all the makings of being one of the best of the year, and if the actual film lives up to the trailer, then I can guarantee it's worth a watch. You won't have to wait that long either because it's set to release on February 4th of 2022.
In at number 5 we have The Descent, 2005. First up, we have The Descent, a British film from 2005 about a caving exhibition. We follow a group of 7 women exploring a cave that's never been explored before. The only way out of the cave is through it, so they travel deeper and deeper until they're trapped deep underground. We watch as one by one they meet a horrible fate, some accidental climbing mistakes, others descending into madness. They soon find out they are not alone in the cave and are being pursued by terrifying hordes of crawlers, but what we might today call Wendigo. They are a race of cave-dwelling humanoids who have adapted to near-constant darkness and lost any previous trace of humanity they may have had, becoming monsters in the process. The girls start to turn on each other while they struggle to survive in the darkness. They created 2 different endings for this film after deciding that the British ending was too dark for the US audience. In the US ending, our main character wakes up in the cave and crawls to the surface back to her car. When she is driving away, she pulls over and vomits, and when she leans back in the car, she is startled by the ghost of Juno sitting in the passenger seat. However, in the British version, they reveal that this was all a trick of her mind, and she wakes up back in the cave, having never escaped at all. The film ends with the screams of the crawlers getting louder as they surround her. This one is enough to make anyone scared of the dark. Coming in at number 4, we have Ringu, 1998, aka The Ring. We have all heard about the adaptation of The Ring, but have you seen seen the original, more horrifying one, Ringu. The story follows a reporter and her ex-husband as they investigate the sudden death of her niece, who died of a sudden heart failure with an unnaturally horrified expression on her face. She then finds out that her niece recently visited a cabin with her friends. Each of them had died the exact same way on the exact same night. She visits the cabin to find out what could have caused them all to die so suddenly when she finds the unlabeled tape. After watching the tape, she understands that they had all been cursed as she was now. Things become more tense when Reiku's young son watches the tape, starting the 1-week countdown before he too dies. She has to break the curse or she and everyone she cares about will die in less than a week. Their discovery takes them to a volcanic island where they can discover that the video has a connection to a psychic who died 30 years ago and her child. In the end, they discover that the only way to break the curse is to copy it and show it to someone else, passing it on to them, dooming them instead of you. It's a good thing no one has a VHS player anymore. In at number 3 we have A Nightmare on Elm Street 1984. This one is sure to keep you up at night. A Nightmare on Elm Street follows a group of teenagers battling a killer who attacks in their dreams. We follow Nancy and her friends trying to figure out why they're being hunted and how to stop it. This was our first introduction to the infamous Freddy Krueger, a killer who is badly burned all over his body. He uses a gloved hand with razors to kill his victims. Nowadays we all know who Freddy Krueger is, but in 1984 a killer who hunts you in your dreams was truly terrifying. Nancy has to struggle to stay awake throughout the filmmaking, depending on caffeine to keep her awake for days on end. They slowly discover that they are being hunted due to their parents being involved with Freddy's death. Nancy's mum revealed Krueger was an insane child murderer who had been released on a technicality and then burned alive by parents living on their street seeking vigilante justice. They attempt to bring Krueger out of the dream so they can kill him in the physical world. Could you stay awake for 7 days to avoid Freddy? I couldn't. In at number 2 we have Psycho 1960. This was the original slasher film. When Psycho premiered in 1960, the audiences were screaming in horror. They could not believe their eyes. It took the world by storm and instantly became a classic for horror lovers. Alfred Hitchcock wanted to shock audiences and do something no one else had ever done before. The audience were horrified that Marion Crane, the main character, had been so brutally murdered. Never before had a main character died in a film, and here she was stabbed repeatedly within the first 30 minutes. Hitchcock even received an angry letter from one man claiming his daughter is now refusing to shower thanks to this film. The film continues when Marion's sister starts to wonder where she is. Marion had stolen money from her previous job and was hoping to make a new life when she stumbled into the Bates Motel. Lila hires a private detective to look into the disappearance, but once he goes to the Bates Motel, he too never returns. When Lila and her partner Sam go to visit the house, they see Norman Bates in the window. They go to the police to report all of the mysterious disappearances, where they are told that Norman's mother, has been dead for 10 years. Later it is revealed that Norman Bates had multiple personalities and had been acting as himself and his mother since her death, killing unsuspecting women who visit the motel. It might not seem like much now, but this film was as terrifying and horrific as films came in the 60s and paved the way for the horror genre. Freaked me the out. I saw it at 4. Accidentally. And finally, in at number 1, The Conjuring 2013. We're all very familiar with the Conjuring franchise, but did you know that the set of each film is thought to be haunted after many spooky happenings on set? The Conjuring series is based on the real experiences of paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren, so it makes sense that the spirits that the films are about might not be too happy about it. The first film released in 2013 and followed the story of a family who've just moved into a farmhouse when they start to suspect something is not right. They call in Ed and Lorraine to help save them from spirits within the home. The hauntings do not stop when the camera stopped rolling. Some of the cast members began to notice unexplained bruises over their bodies. Similar to this, the lead actress Vera Farmiga woke up one morning and noticed 3 claw-like scratches on her thigh. She said they didn't hurt, but it looked as though someone with long nails had dragged them over her skin. Vera seems to have got the worst of the hauntings and also woke up between 3 to 4 AM when she began filming. She was a little spooked, as the witching hour is something that has been talked about during the film. Was the set haunted by the original ghosts? I guess we'll never know, but probably.
At number 5, Insidious: The Red Door. Standing as the 5th installment to the bone-chilling Insidious franchise, The Red Door acts as a conclusion to the Lambert family saga and their never-ending struggle with the Further and the many demons that inhabit the realm. The 2023 supernatural horror film has sent shivers down the spines of audiences, cementing its status as a terrifying addition to the Insidious franchise. Directed by Patrick Wilson in his directorial debut, this movie takes horror to new heights. The film reunites fans with familiar faces from previous installments such as Ty Simpkins, Rose Byrne, and Lynn Shay. The storyline takes place 9 years after the events of Insidious Chapter 2, and follows Josh Lambert, played by Patrick Wilson, who is grappling with repressed memories of his traumatic experiences in the Further, a realm beyond our own that harbors dark spirits. His life is in disarray, with a strained relationship with his son Dalton. When Dalton begins to paint a disturbing image of the eponymous red door that leads to the Further, the horror unfolds. As Dalton delves into the world of astral projection, he encounters a malevolent spirit at his college frat party. This spirit, coupled with a YouTube video featuring Elise Rainier, a recurring character in the Insidious series that explains astral projection and the Further, sets the stage for spine-chilling events. Dalton's attempts at astral projection lead to a confrontation with the menacing red-faced demon that haunted him as a child. Yes, that same infamous demon from the first Insidious movie. The plot thickens when Dalton's brother Foster reveals recurring dreams of a possessed Josh trying to harm them, a callback to Insidious Chapter 2, where the Lambert family has their memories wiped of the terrifying events at the end of the movie. Dalton's artistic expression becomes a vehicle for unlocking repressed memories, as his paintings reveal the truth behind their family's haunting past. However, Dalton gets trapped in the Further, forcing Josh and his now ex Renee to journey into the Further and rescue him. The film builds suspense as they confront the demon in a terrifying showdown, leading to a climactic battle to seal the red door and banish the Further's horrors once and for all. Insidious: The Red Door masterfully combines psychological horror with supernatural elements. The fear factor is amplified as the characters confront their past and the malevolent forces that threaten to consume them. The demon's relentless pursuit keeps viewers on the edge of their seats. The film's success is evident in its box office performance, grossing an impressive $187 million worldwide, making it the highest grossing film in the Insidious franchise. While it has received mixed reviews from critics, it has undeniably struck a chord with horror enthusiasts, leaving them trembling with fear and eagerly anticipating what nightmares the franchise will conjure next. As the movie concludes with a hint of reconciliation and a glimmer of hope, it leaves the audience with a lingering sense of unease. Insidious: The Red Door proves that the franchise still knows how to terrify and captivate, making it a must-watch for horror aficionados. Next, at number 4, Malum. A reboot of the 2014 film Last Shift, Malum is a horror thriller directed by Anthony de Blasi, which released in May. The premise is that of a rookie cop taking the last shift at a decommissioned police station where a group of cult members ended their lives years prior. The perfect recipe for a horror movie that will leave you shaking in your very seat. The film begins with a disturbing glimpse of young girls in extreme distress, accompanied by gruesome and gory images to boot. Throughout the movie, there is a recurring theme of bovine symbolism that adds to the eerie atmosphere, as cult members sing and dance in praise of an entity known as the Low God. Luckily, the cult is put to a stop when we are introduced to Will Lauren, a hero cop who had previously raided a cult led by a man named John Malum. Hey, that's the title of the movie. He saves the captive girls from a ritualistic sacrifice. However, in a dark twist, Lauren brutally kills 3 fellow officers before doing the same to himself, while expressing his devotion to the enigmatic Low God. A year later, we meet Jessica Lauren, the daughter of Will, a rookie cop preparing for her first shift. She harbors resentment towards her father and seeks answers about his violent rampage. Her journey begins in her father's old precinct, where she meets many cult members known as mountain folk. Inside the deserted station, she encounters a series of eerie occurrences, including disturbing visions and cryptic phone calls. As Jessica's investigation continues, she discovers footage showcasing the brutality of John Malum and his cult, including a gruesome sequence. She learns that her own mother, Diane, was part of the cult, and Jessica herself was baptized in the red bodily fluids of Malum. The tension escalates when the police station is raided by Malum's followers, and Jessica attempts to rescue kidnapped girls, only to witness their horrifying deaths. The film reaches its climax when Jessica's mother returns to the station, and Jessica is forced to face the demon they call the Low God, only to discover that it is her own mother. In a heart-wrenching moment, Jessica takes her own life, leading her into a nightmarish afterlife. The film ends with Jessica in hell, sitting beside Malum as his queen. Pretty messed up if you ask me, but hey, we don't watch horror movies for their happy endings. At number 3, Box Barcelona. If any of you remember when the first Bird Box movie took the world by storm in 2008, I'm sure most of you remember when the first Bird Box movie took the world by storm in 2018. The premise was simple. There are monsters that kill you if you can see them, so everyone has to live a life of blindness in order to survive in a post-apocalyptic world. The movie garnered so much success that they released a spin-off sequel, Bird Box Barcelona, this July. As the title suggests, the movie takes place in the same world as the first, but instead of rural America, it's in Barcelona, Spain. A man named Sebastian and his daughter Anna journey together in this desolate landscape where survival relies on blindfolds worn outdoors to shield against these malevolent beings. On their journey, they encounter a group of survivors who believe that they know the whereabouts of a generator that can provide light and warmth. He joins them in a shelter with a bus hangar. However, as dawn breaks, Sebastian takes a sinister turn. He drives a bus outside, causing everyone to lose their blindfolds, then slowly guides them to open their eyes, ensuring that they come in contact with the horrifying entities, killing them. Astonishingly, Sebastian remains unaffected, revealing himself as a seer. His daughter Anna commends her father for saving these people and encourages him to find other lost sheep. A stark contrast from the more heroic protagonist of the first movie. The narrative then rewinds 9 months, when the entities first emerged, prompting mass migration. Sebastian and Anna found refuge in a church under the guidance of Padre Esteban, who viewed these entities as angels liberating humanity from suffering through death. Despite their attempts to hide, a group of seers led by Padre captured them. Tragically, Anna was forced to open her eyes and perished. When Sebastian confronted the entities, he didn't meet his end, but instead saw an apparition of Anna, a presence that has accompanied him ever since, urging him to save others. Yeah, this one's weird. Throughout the movie, Sebastian attempts to save all sorts of other survivors, until finding a change of heart, and he begins to resist the influence of his late daughter's apparition. This conflict within himself comes to a close when he sacrifices his own life to aid 2 other survivors so they can get to a safe haven and potentially find a way to counteract the monsters that no one can see. It's an interesting concept and a scary movie, but the film garnered little success, as many say it doesn't capture the same mystery and fear that its predecessor did. At number 2, Infinity Pool. Released in January, Infinity Pool is a sci-fi horror film about a struggling writer and his wife on vacation who, after an accident, discover the country's dark culture. Author James Foster and his wife Em vacation to the fictional seaside country of Litolka. Their already strained marriage takes a darker turn when they befriend a couple, Gabby and Albin, fans of James' sole published book. Together, they break the resort rules to explore the countryside. During their excursion, a tragic accident occurs when James hits a local man while driving, causing his death. Gabby insists that they can't involve the corrupt local authorities, and a unique form of justice is revealed. The guilty can pay a fee to be cloned, and the clone is executed in their place. James, using his wife's wealth, opts for this option but must watch his clone's execution. Em is appalled and wants to leave, but James is oddly drawn to the spectacle. As James's stay extends, he meets a group of tourists who annually return to commit crimes and watch their clones die. Encouraged by this group, James descends into a life of crime, partaking in robberies, abusing staff, and killing locals. James's descent reaches a horrifying point when he's tricked into brutalizing his own clone. In a moment of clarity, he tries to escape but is abducted by the group, who want him to become a fellow killer tourist. After fleeing and collapsing at a farm, James is once again confronted by the group, who demand he kill his own clone. He reluctantly does so, visibly disturbed. Gabby's bizarre act of comfort further unsettles him. As the group leaves for the US, James decides to stay behind. Alone amidst a monsoon at the closed resort, he reflects on the harrowing events he has experienced. Yeah, creepy as hell. If I had a clone, I'd probably just ask him to do chores and play video games with me. None of that weird killing stuff. Number 1, Talk to Me. Released in July, Talk to Me is an Australian supernatural horror film about a group of teenagers who discover they are able to contact spirits using a mysterious embalmed hand. But things take a turn for the worst when one of them takes things too far. The story goes like this. At a crowded house party, Cole searches for his brother Duckett, but their encounter takes a horrifying turn as Duckett stabs his brother and then himself in the face. 17-year-old Mia grapples with her mother Rhea's death 2 years earlier and her strained relationship with her father Max. Mia, along with her friend Jade and Jade's brother Riley, sneaks out to a gathering where a severed, embalmed hand with mysterious powers is the main attraction. This hand allows people to commune with spirits by saying, "Talk to me," and then letting the spirit possess them by saying, "I let you in," for up to 90 seconds. Mia's the first to try it, and she becomes possessed by a malevolent spirit with a dangerous interest in Riley. However, others at the gathering manage to sever the connection before anything terrible happens. The group gathers again the next night at Jade's house to use the hand. Riley, against Jade's wishes, participates and appears to be possessed by Mia's deceased mother Rhea, seeking reconciliation. Mia lets the possession continue beyond the time limit, and Riley's body is taken over by malevolent spirits, causing him to repeatedly harm himself. This is where things go really awry. Haunted by visions of Rhea, Mia is ostracized by Jade and her mother Sue, who blame her for Riley's condition. Mia uses the hand secretly to contact Rhea, who claims her death was accidental and that she must help Riley, who remains possessed and constantly harms himself. Rhea tells Mia that Riley must die to be set free, leading Mia to kidnap Riley from the hospital. She is on the brink of pushing him into oncoming traffic, but when Rhea insists they'll have him forever, Mia realizes the spirits are manipulating her. She steps away, and Jade arrives just in time to save Riley. Mia ends up injured on the road, and in a surreal twist, realizes she has died and become a spirit. She is drawn to another party where the same ritual with the embalmed ham has taken place. The story concludes with Mia becoming part of the spectral cycle, as someone at the new party says, "I let you in." Damn, don't mess with severed hands, I guess, you guys.
In 5th place, we have The Wailing. Rated 18A, it's a 2016 South Korean horror film written and directed by Na Hong-jin and starring Kwak Do-won, Hwang Jun-min, Chun Woo-hee. In the movie, a series of gore-drenched slangs hits home for Jung-gu, a slow-witted cop in a small town, when he discovers that his daughter, Hyo-jin, has become afflicted by, well, whatever is killing his fellow townsfolk. So he is, as the first hour or so suggests, completely out of his depth. And at one point in the film, writer and director minds his story back for, dark humor, and wins viewers over by making our main character look like a lovable screw-up. He's confronted with a mountain of bodies, an evil foreigner with a cabin full of creepy photos, and plague-like omens that manifest in the form of dead ravens, a rock-churning mute, and crazy dreams. The Wailing received widespread critical acclaim. On popular review website Rotten Tomatoes, the film has an approval rating of 99% and an average rating of 8 out of 10, based on 82 reviews. The site's critics' consensus reads, "The Wailing delivers an atmospheric, cleverly constructed mystery whose supernatural thrills more than justify its imposing length." On fellow website Metacritic, the film has a weighted average score of 81 out of 100 based on 19 critics, indicating, universal acclaim. It was released in South Korea on May 12th of 2016. The film was shown in the out of competition section at the Cannes Film Festival in France on May 18th and was released in the United States on May 27th. It was then released on Netflix at a later date, but it has since been taken off the streaming service. Well, if you'll excuse me, this sounds like something I should perhaps watch, maybe even tonight. In 4th place, we have Repo the Genetic Opera. Call me biased all you want. This beloved train wreck and its sequels are some of my favorite comfort media watches. Where the heck else am I going to see an ensemble like Paul Sorvino, Paris Hilton, Anthony Head, Sarah Brightman, Ogre, Alexa Penavega, and Terrence Dunnock all in the same place? It's like a Tumblr fanfic mess come to life. Oh, and if you didn't gather from the title, it's an actual genuine opera, so it's entirely sung. The movie takes place in the mid-21st century, when an epidemic of organ failures leads to the rise of GeneCo, a company providing transplants at a great price. And by mid-21st century, I mean 2056 to be exact. So, a little over 30 years from now. Those who miss their payments become targets of GeneCo mercenaries, who repossess the organs. The CEO of GeneCo, Roddy Largo, discovers he is terminally ill and is adamant that his offspring aren't worthy heirs to his fortune, and instead plans to give his entire fortune to 17-year-old Shiloh Wallace, the daughter of his late ex-fiancée, Marnie. In this crazy world of addiction and legalized killing, Shiloh is a sheltered girl who seeks a cure for her rare disease as well as information about her family's mysterious history. She meets a whole wild crew of folks along the way and learns a lot about her dad. Spoiler alert, it turns out he's been making her sick the entire time to try and protect/cure her, out of guilt from losing his wife. Granted, I didn't super expect a doctor by day who masquerades as a repo killer slasher man by night to be, super ethical. I'm willing to bet though, most of y'all have heard at least one song from this. Does Zydrate come in a little glass vial? Sound familiar? Zydrate is the substance that sedates folks for their surgery in this world, and it's super hecking pricey. Ergo, why most folks buy it secondhand off of dealers. This movie really likes its gore, and since it shares a director with the first 4 Saw films, you can probably get an idea of what to expect visually. Usually, I'm not one for gore, preferring psychological horror, but but something about this film just scratched a really happy itch in my brain the first time I saw it, and it has become a favorite ever since. When the film was originally being promoted, due to a lack of studio support, the director, Darren Bousman, and creator/grave robber, Terrence Dunnick, did most of their own promotion by hosting a Repo Road Tour. The tour was set up for one-night screenings in 7 different United States cities and included extensive question and answer sessions following each showing. Because of strong ticket sales, a second and third touring session were added, in addition to a British tour across 4 locations. The film received a limited release in the United States and Canada on November 7th of 2008 and was released in early 2009 on DVD and Blu-ray, featuring 2 audio commentaries, 2 featurettes, the theatrical trailer, and 4 deleted scenes. As much as I'll wax poetic about it, it's not for the faint of heart. The gore alone, never mind watching Paris Hilton's face fall off, can definitely leave an impact. If you do make it through Repo, I highly recommend also giving The Devil's Carnival and its sequel a watch. While they're not direct sequels to Repo, they have the same grit, and the dark circus and religion themes are fabulous. Also, you get the additions of David Hasselhoff and Adam Pascal, which makes it a win in my book. In third place, we have Barbarian. Probably the most recent release on today's list, and rated R. Barbarian came out in 2022 and was picked up by HBO Max, and later got bounced to Disney Plus when it was deemed too scary for the original platform. Netflix never wanted it, adamant it was too scary for their viewers. Documentary researcher Tess has booked an Airbnb and arrives at night in the pouring rain to find a guy named Keith is already staying there. So Keith is played by well-known spooky actor Bill Skarsgård, and if that doesn't ring a bell, he's the current Pennywise the Clown. Ergo, he's dang good at being creepy. He eventually convinces her to stay until they can get this sorted, and since she can see proof of reservation, she decides why not. And being a gentleman, the guy offers to take the couch. As is with many things I watch, my common sense is already screaming, but a trope is a trope. When Tess wakes up in the middle of the night, she's kinda shaken up to find her bedroom door has been opened, but Keith is asleep and assures her he did not touch the door. The next morning she goes for her interview and is warned not to stay in the area where she is staying. Upon returning to the house, she is chased inside by a homeless man who yells at her to leave and winds up locked in the basement, stumbling across a hidden corridor, leading to a room with a camcorder, a stained mattress, and a red handprint. Keith eventually tries to save her, but the pair are attacked by a naked, deformed woman, referred to later as the mother, who kills them. Later on, Airbnb owner AJ is introduced, zipping down some coastal road in a convertible, only to find out in a phone call that he's being accused of doing something horrible to an actress. As someone who very likely did said thing, AJ is more concerned with his career and putting this behind him. So he's been pressured to sell his assets to pay his legal costs, so he travels to Detroit to inspect the house before selling it, and finds the hidden tunnel and tries to measure it, believing it may increase the house's value. So the mother attacks AJ in the tunnel, and he falls into a hole where he meets Tess. A flashback to the 1980s shows Frank, the house's original owner, abducting women, sexually taking advantage of them, and keeping them captive in the tunnels. In the present, the mother locks Tess and AJ in the hole. Tess tells AJ that the mother wants them to act as her children. AJ is then dragged away by the mother, who forcibly breastfeeds him, and Tess uses the opportunity to get the heck out of Dodge. While the summary might not sound super scary and rather cheesy and tropey, it's the use of cinematography and framing that really sets the tone for nightmares for those brave enough to watch. Gore scenes include a head being bashed against a wall until it's a red pulp, eye gouging, which an arm being ripped off and used as a club, a red kaboom wound, and more. If that isn't enough, there's discussion and dialogue about sexual aggression towards women, as well as dialogue about inbreeding. I'm torn between wanting to watch this tonight before bed or waiting for a day off, but let me know what y'all think in the comments. In second place, we have Shrew's Nest. So this is a horror film that was released in 2014. It was deemed too scary for any streaming service until Shudder came to be in 2016, and has been highly praised as one of the original films of the platform. Plot is set in the 1950s in an apartment in Madrid. Agoraphobic main character Montse earns her living by working as a seamstress out of her home, and lost her youth taking care of her younger sister, who is referred to as the girl, who brings, some additional earnings to the household by working at a store outside of the home. Montse is at odds with the prospect of her sister establishing intimate relationships with males, despite the girl actually coming of age. Our main character chooses to hide from reality, feeding an obsessive, unhinged temperament, and experiences visions of her awful father who abandoned the family, mocking her. Carlos, a neighbor of the ladies, falls down the stairs and looks for help knocking on the apartment's door, and Montse, despite, reluctance, eventually proceeds to drag an unconscious and injured Carlos in. She becomes infatuated with him, who, being wounded in the leg, is unable to move out of the bed. During secret meetings of the girl and Carlos, the former advises Carlos to get the heck out of there, and to no success, as Carlos left the altar on his wedding night and is on the run from commitment from his pregnant fiancée, because he doesn't want to deal with the responsibilities as a husband and a father. So, Gold star for him. Monty drugs him with morphine, and when he does attempt to escape, she sews his leg to the bed. After killing his fiancée and others, Monty meets her demise at the hands of the girl, who's trying to help Carlos escape. In Monty's last words, the girl finds out that she is actually Monty's daughter, as her grief-stricken father impregnated Monty after the death of Monty's mother. Instead of the dad running away, Monty poisoned him to put an end to his awful behavior on Monty herself and her innocent daughter, keeping her father's body on her bed for weeks before storing his remains in the armoire, and was too ashamed to tell her the truth. I promise not to spoil the actual ending, but it's a doozy. In first place, we have Night of the Living Dead. Yep, the first big modern zombie film. Released in 1968, it was directed, photographed, and edited by George A. Romero, written by Romero and John Russo, and produced by Russell Streiner and Carl Hardman. A crazy group of individuals takes refuge in an abandoned house when corpses begin to leave the graveyard in search of fresh human bodies to devour. Main character Ben does his best to control the situation, but when the reanimated bodies surround the house, the other survivors begin to panic. Any semblance of order within the group begins to dissipate. The zombies start to find ways inside, and one by one, the living humans become the prey of the deceased ones. If you haven't watched it before today, shame on you, because it's a masterpiece and a half. It premiered in Pittsburgh on October 1st of 1968, and it grossed $12 million American dollars domestically and $18 million internationally, earning more than 250 times its budget and making it one of the most profitable film productions ever made at the time. So it was released shortly before the adoption of the Motion Picture Association of America rating system, and the film's explicit violence and gore was considered groundbreaking, leading to a lot of controversy and negative reviews. Its first showing was a weekend matinee, and some folks brought their little ones to it. As someone who scares people for a living and questions when adults bring strollers to a haunted event, this was many times worse, fully traumatizing some of the little ones. Zombies are shown in this eating the organs and entrails of the victims they've killed. A young woman turns into a zombie and impales her mother to death repeatedly with a trowel. Zombies are killed with rifle targets to the head, set on fire, and crushed with tire irons. Humans are trying to survive, but they turn on each other, including one scene in which one man kills another with a kaboom device. It eventually garnered a cult following and critical acclaim, and has appeared on lists of the greatest and most influential films by outlets such as Empire, the New York Times, and Total Film. In 1999, the film was deemed culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant by the Library of Congress and selected for preservation in the National Film Registry. In February 2020, Netflix took down Night of the Living Dead from its streaming service in Germany following a legal request because the film is banned in that country. And that brings us to the end of our time, and I'm feeling the need for a Terrence Dunick triple feature tonight. Who needs sleep when that's an option?
Number 5, Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. Who doesn't love taking a trip down to the 100-acre woods with Winnie the Pooh and all his funny friends? These beloved childhood characters are ready to shine on the silver screen. In a sequel to Pooh's Heffalump adventure, please welcome Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, an ultra-violent splatterhouse slasher set in the 100-acre woods, reimagining the beloved children's characters as bloodthirsty maniacs who spend a whole lot less time playing around and eating honey and getting stuck in trees and more time chasing people with axes and rusty pickaxes and stuff. Oh bother. Trailers and photos of Blood and Honey went viral pretty much immediately because I think everyone saw it and kind of did the same thing where we were like, that's real? What? Yeah, it is. Copyright law and public domain is a wild, wild thing. Winnie the Pooh is public domain, so you watching at home, if you want to make your own Winnie the Pooh movie, this is my invitation. You go right ahead. So here we are, where we have an ultra-violent Winnie the Pooh movie. Something absolutely no one was asking for, but I'm glad we have anyway, because at the very least, I can't claim to have ever seen a movie like this, really. And you know what? Credit where it's due, it does actually look pretty unnerving. Pooh looks the most terrifying he ever has, a far cry from all of our nice memories of him. Piglet as well has gone from like a cute little cutie to like a hillbilly horror. Eeyore, my favorite, he's not around because if the plot summary on IMDb is anything to go by, Winnie the Pooh ate him. He's probably happier now, I guess. That's kind of what he always wanted. I think this will be a fun watch, kind of a movie to get a big pepperoni pizza and some snacks and a few friends around. I don't think it'll win an Oscar, but the novelty will do it for me. If it turns out to be a big success, director Rice Frake Waterfield has spoken out about how he wants to make an entire series of public domain slasher movies, eventually building up to a shared universe because everyone wants some of that sweet, sweet MCU money. Me personally, I would love to see the new Winnie the Pooh going toe-to-toe with Peter Rabbit in a horror movie Alien vs. Predator situation. I know they've had tension for years. Time will tell if this dream will come to light, but pre-production has already started on a Peter Pan movie in a similar vein to Blood and Honey, so expect a blood-soaked trip to Neverland sometime in the near future. But if you can't wait and you want more horror content right now, you don't need to grab a ticket to the movie. movies. You can just stay subscribed to Top 5 Scary for more premium horror content literally every single day. We got scary stuff for every occasion, so click through and I'm certain you'll find something to like. But finish up this one first, okay? We got lots more movies to go. Number 4, Skinamarink. I love a low-down horror. Even better, like a low-down, low-budget found footage horror. Some of my favorite flicks are stuff like Blair Witch Project or VHS. It's a great way for lower budget productions to stand out, where you can't just rely on tons and tons of gore effects or CGI monsters to serve up scares and have to, use creative filmmaking. So let me introduce Skinamarink, a Canadian experimental horror film made on an absolute shoestring budget that has critics singing praises and double checking their hallways just to make sure no evil got inside. Skinamarink is about as bare bones as a movie can get. It was made on a budget that was less than the price of most used cars and was shot entirely on digital in the childhood home of the director, which I guess would technically make this a home movie. Skinamarink is one of those ones where really the less you know about it, the better, so I don't want to give too much away, so I'll give you the little IMDb teaser and hopefully that's enough to excite you. The son and daughter of a family wake up in the middle of the night, discover that their father is missing, and discover that something is happening to the house as all windows, doors, and entrances and exits to the outside world appear to just be vanishing. The director, Kyle Edward Ball, is making his cinema debut with Skinamarink, and prior to this he made short films on a YouTube channel inspired by commenters' nightmares that they had when they were young. Skinamarink is no different, with some reviewers pointing out that it was the kind of movie that made them feel like they were young again, wanting to pull a blanket over their eyes, afraid of boogeymen in the dark or monsters under the bed. So if you're looking for tons of action, movie monsters, blood splatters, Skinamarink is not really that at all. But if you want a slower, very down-to-earth, grounded, low-budget horror movie, Skinamarink will have you glued to the scene. Glued to the screen. I literally can't read today. I'd say if you're a fan of stuff like the Blair Witch Project, you owe it to yourself to give Skinamarink a shot. Plus, let's shout out as many independent Canadian filmmakers as we can. Number 3, Hellraiser 2022. The original Hellraiser is one of my absolute favorite horror films ever, which I think tells you just about everything you need to know about me. I love the Cenobites and I love all the sights they have to show me. The original movie is scary, absolutely gut-churningly disgusting, and it's a piece of special effect wizardry that still holds up to this day. It also gave us one of the best, creepiest horror movie icons with Pinhead. Originally dubbed the Priest, the tall, slender demon, or angel to some, who enjoys pleasure and heart-stopping pain in equal measures. So when they announced that they were going to reboot Hellraiser and also recast Pinhead, myself and a lot of fans were more than a little hesitant at a new take on the classic character, but then I found out it was being directed by David Bruckner, who made The Ritual and worked on VHS, and I knew the film was in good hands, and lo and behold, hey, it was pretty good. The visual effects and gore for the new film are some of the best out there. The new design for Pinhead is horrifyingly cool, trading out the old goth kid at a nightclub look for a terrifying flayed skin design, making it look like she's wearing a costume when really she's just naked and had all her skin peeled, which is the most Hellraiser thing ever. And oh yeah, Pinhead's a girl now. Slip that in like it was nothing. For me, a Hellraiser film's most important quality above all else is it goopy and gross. Does it make me want to cover my eyes and not look at whatever's on the screen? Yeah? Then this is a great Hellraiser film, and I want to see more through cracks of my fingers, so give it a watch. I wish this one could have been in theaters. It's streaming on Hulu for those who get that, and available on digital purchase everywhere else. Go in, give it an open mind, if for nothing else than its gross out effects. I know that doesn't really sound like a pleasant selling point for a movie, but if you're gonna see Hellraiser, that's exactly what you want. Number 2, Knock at the Cabin. Now, depending on how you feel, M. Night Shyamalan is either a total hack who's been coasting for years on a dwindling reputation, or is a misunderstood auteur who's one of the last unique voices in horror cinema, and it really doesn't seem like there's much wiggle room for where people fall on that guy. So let me know down below in the comments what you think about old M. Night. Genius or total goof? Knock at the Cabin is the newest Shyamalan flick starring Dave Bautista and Jonathan Groff. It's an apocalyptic psychological horror thriller, which is a great combination of words in my opinion. Bautista and Groff play parents of a young girl who are vacationing out in a cabin, but things take a dour turn when the family is apprehended by armed bandits who insist that they've seen prophetic visions of the end of days, and the only way to prevent the apocalypse from claiming the globes will be to sacrifice a member of their own family. That's all the recipe for a good thriller for me. Now, Knock at the Cabin just came out, and I haven't even had time to see it yet. I only get so much time away from the fog. I watch 4 movies a year, to be honest, and they're the same movies I've been watching since I was a kid. So we'll see if it stands the test test of time and if it'll be a classic or a flop, but I've heard lots of great things from a lot of my friends who like these kind of movies. So, you know what? We'll catch up to this one and I'll loop back around. I'll let you know how I feel. Keep an eye out for another video like this where I'll bring up Knock at the Cabin again. At number 1, The Exorcist. Hey, wait a second. The Exorcist already came out. That was like a long time ago. It came out in like 1973. I know they made some sequels and stuff, and you can always crank some more out, but we're getting a brand new Exorcist movie in 2023? Oh, and it's serving as a sequel to the original 1973 film, and disregarding all other sequels in favor of a new timeline. That kind of sounds like what they did with Halloween, you know, in 2018 when that guy David Gordon Green made a Halloween sequel that was a sequel to the original film only, and erased all the other so-so sequels and brought back the old characters and everything, and it was pretty good. And oh, David Gordon Green is directing this Exorcist movie too. So this guy's just got one trick then. He makes sequels to classic horror movies. We don't know a whole lot about the new Exorcist movie. In fact, if you go to IMDb right now, it's officially listed as Untitled The Exorcist Film, which I don't think is the catchiest name. That's probably gonna look a little bit busy on the movie poster. So far, the only confirmed details that we know for certain is that David Gordon Green is directing, and Ellen Burstyn will be reprising her role as the mother from the original Exorcist film. Just like how Jamie Lee suited up to beat Michael Myers around the block in Halloween 2018. Now, will this new Exorcist movie be good? Personally, I'm pretty optimistic. The 2018 Halloween is fantastic, and is my opinion the second best Halloween movie ever made, after the first one, which carries a lot for me. The other two in the trilogy didn't do much for me, but that's neither here nor there. We've had a lot of good possession movies coming out. The Conjuring franchise is mostly about that, so I think it would be pretty cool to see a new one from a guy who we all know can deliver a good legacy horror sequel and can bring up some scares and respect an old franchise.